ahead and begin the meeting. I'm going to ask Commissioner Thomas to lead us in the invocation, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance. Everyone, please stand.
Please join me. Gracious Heavenly Father, we just acknowledge you as our Lord and Savior. We thank you for this day. We thank you for this time that we can come together and do our county's business. I just ask your blessings upon each one that is here today and those that are home and their families. We just ask you to be present with us tonight, guide our hearts and our minds, help us to make the wise decisions that's best for our county. In your holy name we pray. Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
At this time, do we have any additions or changes to the agenda?
None here. None.
We have any motion, Commissioner?
No. Motion to approve the agenda. Second.
Have a motion made and seconded to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
The agenda is approved. Hey, as she's bringing up the cards for the citizens to be heard, one thing I want to address tonight, and you know, we've got this meeting tonight, plus we've got the meeting coming up. We've got this meeting, and we've got one other meeting ahead of an upcoming election. It could be very tempting for someone to want to turn the citizens to be heard section into a political forum and try to make personal attacks. Well, tonight, one thing I'm going to say, you know, everyone's going to get that fills out a card are going to get a chance to speak and address, but I do want to caution that if the discussion deviates into what I feel is a personal attack, I am going to address it, because it does need to be addressed. You know, I believe that we can communicate any opinion that we have, and we can do it respectfully, and we can do it in a way that is not a personal attack or is not an attack against anyone else's dignity. So I just want to let everyone know ahead of time that if someone comes up to speak tonight and their discussion turns into what I feel deem as a personal attack, I will be addressing it.
This county business, just county business.
I would ask tonight that whenever you come up and speak during the citizens be heard or whatever, we focus on county business, county issues, you know, county agenda items. You know, everyone's, you know, free to voice your opinion on an agenda item, but if something deteriorates into what I feel is a personal attack, I will be addressing it tonight. Our first citizen to speak is James Hennessy, followed by Eugene Watkins.
Good evening. James Hennessy, Spring Creek. The citizens of Wakulla need to be alerted to how democracy is being undermined in the upcoming election. Opponents of having the local wetlands ordinance, which includes the local executive committee of the Republican Party, have resurrected that old Richard Nixon strategy of dirty tricks used in the Watergate scandal. They have littered the county with misleading and deceptive gigantic signs which attempt to confuse voters by suggesting that voting for the local wetlands protection provided by Amendment A will somehow protect wetlands and advance property rights. Nothing could be further from the truth. If voters are tricked into voting no on that amendment, our county will be left with only feeble state regulations which do not require any wetland buffer whatsoever for small residential development, and have very liberal permitting for everything else, with buffers only needing to average 25 feet. To further confuse voters, the opposition funded a fake voter phone survey that erroneously suggested that the state has a 50-foot wetland buffer, an entire fabrication. Unmentioned were the 35-foot variances available under the ordinance. As for property rights, the only thing voting no on A will do is advance the rights of a wealthy few who wish to clear-cut more land and make more profit on land for which they pay minimal taxes, because most is classified as timberland. However, the average citizen's property rights will be violated due to increased flooding and increases in insurance rates. Without vegetated buffers to absorb rain, runoff, and pollutants, increased erosion and pollution will be inevitable. Voting no on A will further decrease property values due to more unsightly development in a county with a glut of unsold houses, frequently closed beaches, and threatened fisheries. Another troubling development has been the destruction and removal of yes on A signs, as well as signs for candidates opposing the two incumbent Republican commissioners, both of whom voted to repeal the wetlands ordinance. It will be Commissioners Moore and Merritt are the two who engineered the planned move of the 319-98 intersection to in front of the high school without any public input. Aside from the folly and inconvenience of this move, it will be costing citizens hundreds of thousands of dollars in infrastructure and utility costs. Lastly, the famous saying from the Watergate scandal was, "Follow the money." The citizens of Wakulla County should do that, noting that large donations to Mr. Moore's campaign and the so-called Property Rights for Wakulla organization come from South Florida developers. Don't be deceived. Protect our county's riches and vote yes on Amendment A, and elect two commission candidates with integrity, Bill Anderson and Taylor Phillips.
Our next citizen, Eugene Watkins.
Just a second before we, excuse me, Chairman, excuse me, sir. Just to let everybody know, our audio-visual is down, lightning strike, as well as the Comcast channel is not working, so this will not be publicized. This will not be out on
Okay.
TV. Just to let you know. It'll still be recorded, but Comcast channel's not working.
So it'll still be recorded, it's just not, it won't be live at this
That's
meeting.
right. And also, to the public, please hold no clapping, no booing, no nothing, okay? After somebody talks.
For those that are standing, I think there's a few chairs over on the other side.
Ready?
Mhm.
My name is Eugene Watkins. I live in Crawfordville, Florida. I'm speaking today as a citizen of Wakulla County to vote yes to re-adopt Wakulla County Ordinance 1016 and 1301. These ordinances provide a 75-foot buffer that protect and help wetlands filter waters before going to our springs, rivers, and Gulf of Mexico. The state only requires buffers that average 25 foot around wetlands. Florida Springs and the Indian River Lagoon are dying from algae blooms because Florida has not adequately protected wetlands. 75-foot buffers would give greater protection to springs and rivers in Wakulla County and will help prevent the costly mismanagement by the state due to inadequate buffers. There is misinformation that variances are not allowed by Ordinance 1016. Variances are allowed in buffer zone 2, the first 40 foot, leaving just 35 foot around wetlands. So you can get a buffer variance in the 40-foot buffer. According to page 21, section 9 of the ordinance, application for variance may be filed with the planning department. And here I got a copy of the ordinance, and like I said, on page 21, section 9, it tells you can get a variance. There's been misinformation that you cannot get a variance. There's misinformation that heavy rain will cause your land to become a wetland. Page 9 in the ordinance defines wetlands as areas inundated or saturated by surface water or groundwater, frequently with duration sufficient to support vegetation typical that's adapted to life in saturated soils. Florida wetlands generally include swamps, marshes, cypress domes, and sloughs, not a wet spot in your front yard after a heavy rain. Lawsuits. There has never been a lawsuit against the wetland ordinance that was adopted in 2010. Those that oppose Amendment A say eliminating the ordinance will eliminate risk of lawsuits. The very people who say we will be sued are the same people likely to be suing. We will never have laws that everyone agrees with, but we can't shy away from important issues out of fear. Voting yes for readopting Wakulla's 75-foot wetland buffers benefit the next generation so they can inherit clean water and clear springs. If we do not do better than the state of Florida protecting Wakulla's waters, our children will have the financial burden of fixing the problem we could have prevented. Also, the wetland buffers help lower flood insurance rates. So I recommend to everybody listening, vote yes on referendum A. Thank you.
Our next citizen to speak, Hugh Taylor, who will be followed by Pete Cochran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Before I unload here, you violate your own policy using a built-in parliamentarian. Everything is political. Remember that. You have in your hands the Domestic Violence Awareness Proclamation. There's a luncheon tomorrow at noon. I will give $25 to the cause for every commissioner that shows up. So not only will you get a free lunch, you will get a contribution in your name to the Domestic Violence Awareness Task Force and or Refuge House, whatever I decide. I'm wearing purple today in honor of that, and not, where is she? In honor of Cobb Middle School, where Katie's grandfather made me run those stairs during 2 days. I was going to ask Commissioner Merritt to resign today, and thought better of it. You have almost made me want to read what I had prepared. If I read facts, am I divisive? If I read facts, am I negative? If I say something you don't like, is that political?
I'm the chairman. I have the power to gavel.
You gavel me down, buddy. I'm going.
Go ahead.
Gavel me down.
If you say anything,
violating your own policy.
Mhm.
I understand now why some people accepted going to jail. What you just said. Because canceling the meetings right before the election day is too much of a threat to the citizens, and you'd be called on it. Now that there's Facebook with 6,000 or 8,000 people on it. I put on Facebook I was going to ask Commissioner Merritt to resign. I'm not going to do that. I thought, no, let the voters decide. The men and women should decide if Commissioner Merritt should be reelected.
I'm going to ask you to
solely on his record.
I'm going to ask you to stay on county-related business, Mr.
Is the election not county-related business?
You can continue.
Call him over. There's plenty of places to find out people's records. I would suggest Facebook and YouTube. Just search Interior on Facebook and YouTube for any commissioner up here that's running for re-election. You read that?
Mm-hmm.
Incident reports? I wasn't going to read them. Now I may. You know why? Because your introduction. But I'm not gonna embarrass. Not Mr. Merritt. I don't care about him. I don't care about him.
You can speak
And I don't care about me.
You can speak on county-related issues, but you're not going to personally attack.
Quit. Put your cell phone up there, young man. Is that a personal attack? Ugly tie. Is that a personal attack?
I've heard enough.
Somebody rule me out of order.
I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next speaker because I don't.
Rule me out of order, and
I'll rule you out of order. I'm going to move on to the next speaker.
I'm staying.
Lauren. Next speaker, Pete Cochran. Followed by Steve Cushman.
In or out?
No,
Good evening.
he's good.
Mr. Chairman, thank you.
Mhm.
I want to say something that you probably haven't heard in a while. I want to say thank you all for serving and doing a good job. And that's all I'm going to say tonight. Thank y'all. And even Mr. Edwards over there.
Even David?
Even David.
And David.
And all the
Man,
county
you're going too far,
employees,
Pete.
and all the county employees out here working tonight. Thank y'all for serving and doing y'all's job. Thank y'all.
Thanks, Pete.
Thank you, Pete.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Steve Cushman.
Good evening, Steve Cushman, Panacea. Y'all heard me talk, I think, the meeting before last about the ordinance on the signs and how it was being violated and how that's kind of gotten out of control. So I want to talk a little bit about ordinances, especially the wetlands ordinance. The thing, I think, the deception that was not mentioned a while ago and what's going on is the fact that this thing requires a 5-0 vote to amend at any time once it's passed. What that means is one developer on the board and we need more restriction, we'll never get it. One environmentalist on the board and we need less restriction, we'll never get it. So this thing doesn't tailor to fit our needs here in this county. It's tailored for that special interest group that wants it tailored to their needs. It cost, if we had to do it, to amend it, on special election, $30,000 plus. There were 2 people laid off this year back in April, and I'm not pointing the fingers at anybody for doing it. It was part of the budget control. It had to be done. But those 2 people were laid off. And the savings to this county was probably right about the same amount it would cost for a special election. So I have to question whether or not we have the money to hold a special election should the need arise. Everybody knows I'm a cave diver. Everybody knows I teach aquaculture. Everybody knows what I'm involved in thanks to that special interest group. So I have interest in this county of seeing our natural resources protected, but not at this cost. My fear is we need more protection November the 15th. We're not going to get it. It's just not going to happen. You won't see a 5-0 vote when it comes to wetlands on this board. Sure, it's happened in the past, but is it going to happen now? It's going to take a special election we can't afford to hold. Therefore, my interest in this county is being jeopardized at that point if we need to go that route. On the flip side of that, if we don't need the protection we have right now, we'll never get it. Special election again. Either way you skin it, we're going to spend 30 grand to have a special election. And somebody's going to do just like the Wetlands Alliance did, go out and seek 6,000 signatures to have that election, because that's what it takes. So my advice to everyone and the citizens of this county is vote no on November the 4th. Let's go back to the table and draft an ordinance that actually works for this county, that works in any situation, whether it's more restriction or less restriction, because right now we just don't have that capability. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. John Shuff.
John Shuff, 87 Tupelo Drive. I want to thank you for the opportunity to connect with the citizens of our county again. At the last meeting, you allowed me to discuss the numerous ways our county wetlands are already protected, eliminating any need for additional protection from the proposed ordinance. This evening, we would like to talk about the ramifications of a yes vote on County Referendum A. Please let me begin by paraphrasing a key section of the Byrd-Harris Act, part of Florida law, and the part that has our county staff concerned about re-implementing this grievous ordinance. Landowners will have 1 year from written notice of the implementation of the ordinance to seek compensation from the county for partial or complete loss of their right to use their property. This is an important distinction, as our commissioners voted recently to fully restore our rights to us, and a yes vote will take those rights away again and trigger the Byrd-Harris Act. The word compensation should alarm us, as it will have to be funded from our tax dollars, which will require budget cuts or tax increases, either from our property taxes or from public utility taxes. Please do not think that just because you do not live near a wetland that you will not be affected. We will all be affected by this happening. Re-implementing this ordinance will also cause further erosion to our property values, again requiring incremental increases to everybody's taxes to make up the difference. We have been embroiled on this issue for 2 years. We need to move on with the challenge of developing our economy and creating some jobs, not fighting lawsuits that we will clearly lose. As stated before in my last little talk, was 74% of our county and 85% of our coastal estuaries are already owned and protected by the government. We have a comprehensive plan, a land development code, and new state wetland protections that were passed in 2010 in effect for the remaining 26% of our county. Don't our rights become important at some point during this decision process? I've noticed that the yes folks are trying to assure us that local control is in all of our best interests, and I agree, but they confuse themselves. If we truly want to keep local control, and if we truly want to keep the judicial systems and lawyers away from our tax dollars and out of our government, we will vote no. All of us will vote no on referendum A. In closing, please realize how important it is for each and every one of us to fulfill our civic duty and vote. Referendum A will be decided by very few votes. Make sure yours is counted, because now we have enough regulation and enough taxes, and enough is just enough. Please vote no on referendum A.
Thank you. Next speaker is Mr. Chuck Hickman.
Thank you, Commissioners. My name is Charles Hickman. I reside at 528 Hickorywood Drive, Crawfordville. Before I get into talking about what I've written down here, I want to just throw something on the table. The number of signs that have been missing from either side, I don't care who it is, it doesn't make any difference. Everyone's entitled to their own opinion. However, at this point in time, I know where at least six game cameras are set up and located. So if you're caught, don't be surprised if you're prosecuted. Now to get into the wetlands thing. Since the days of the Romans, water belonged to the people. It still does. That was Roman law, and it was passed to the English. From there to America. And then range wars were fought over it. Does that sound like a range war going on here tonight? Sounds like it to me. In a county that's so rich in water resources, that support local economies and industry, it's our responsibility to help protect that livelihood and our heritage. Wakulla County is home to lots of wetlands. According to the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Services, wetlands comprise about 49% of the county. However, many of these acres are on public lands, and only about 12% of the wetlands are in private lands. The wetlands provide a place for runoff that accumulates to recycle to your water, your drinking water. It's the kidneys of Wakulla County. When developers in South Florida are begging for our water, don't you think there's a reason? It's overbuilding. It's wall-to-wall concrete down there. The wetlands have disappeared, and concrete in its place. There's no place for water to run off to. Therefore, in a place like you would not believe, Miami Beach, they are building lift stations and infusion wells. Why? Because there's nowhere for the water to run off to. You would think you've got an ocean on one side and a bay on the other. It'd run off. It does not. It's captured. Stormwater is polluted.
Thank you, Mr. Hickman.
Okay.
That concludes all of our citizens that we had to speak for the citizens to be heard for the first section.
Mr. Chairman, we're back live again on the
Okay.
Comcast. It just came up.
All right, so we're back live again on Comcast. Due to technical difficulty, we were absent for a little bit.
We still don't have audio visual.
So we just got video, not audio video?
They can watch it at home, but they can't make
They can watch it at home, but just no audio visual.
Oh, okay.
Comcast just came up.
Okay. All right, next we're going to move to a public hearing. We've got our first public hearing Heather?
Yes, I'm sorry.
David?
This agenda item requests board approval to conduct a public hearing and adopt the proposed ordinance amending section 27.050 of the county code relating to littering.
So moved. Second.
Have a motion made and second.
Want to explain, since we got so many new people here, this is a text change really that just...
Yeah, after further review of the amended ordinance 2014-16, it was determined there is inconsistent language in section A regarding the court supervision. Therefore, after confirming the court process with Judge Jill Walker, staff amended that section to reflect the court's needs.
Okay, do we have any? I don't have any citizens' cards to speak on this. Is there any discussion amongst commissioners? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, next one, David.
Bowie?
Yes, Commissioners, this is the third and final public hearing for a proposed change to Section 533 of the Land Development Code dealing with the RTH zoning district standard. And the change is shown on attachment 2, page 2. It just changes the minimum building group length. The Planning Commission recommended in favor of this, and staff is also recommending in favor.
So moved.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made and second. I don't have any citizens to speak on it. Any discussion amongst commissioners? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, we're moving into our awards and presentation section. Our first is the B-map for Wakulla Springs, presented by Commissioner Howard Kessler.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I would also maybe request that you make the announcement that you made prior, since a lot of new people have come into the commission. They may not be aware that if they want to speak, they're going to need to fill out a card.
All right, I would just like to let everyone know, if you would like to speak on an issue that or an agenda item, please fill out a card for that agenda item ahead of us speaking on that issue. We've already had our first citizens to be heard, but we have a second citizens to be heard at the end. If you would like to speak at the citizens to be heard section at the end, then fill out a card.
And as well as
That's also on any item that's on
as
the
well as
agenda.
agenda item.
And they're
Talk about
located
the flowers, you got to fill out a card. There.
and they're located up at the front desk up here.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chairman. In 2012, the DEP established the maximum allowable level of nitrate in the upper Wakulla River as 0.35 milligrams per liter. And to attain this goal, it was necessary to reduce nitrate loads from sources such as septic tanks by 56.2%. The department recently released the Basin Management Action Plan, or otherwise known as the B-MAP, that is supposed to set out a strategy for making the required reductions. The action plan is actually, what it turns out to be, a delaying tactic designed to put off any meaningful action to restore Wakulla Springs for at least 5 more years. Tallahassee's wastewater facility had been the largest single source of nitrate loading in Wakulla Springs. But the new advanced treatment facility has reduced nitrate to 1/3 of what it was. But additional reductions are necessary. Most of the remaining sources of nitrate are either not subject to human control or are cost prohibitive, not effective. That leaves the 8,600 septic tanks in the Wakulla Spring Shed south of the Cody Scarp as the best option for additional nitrate reduction. Our present BMAP plan, by the opinion of many, is weak and ineffectual. What we have going on right now in the upper Floridan aquifer is the equivalent of 376 tons of nitrate going in to our Wakulla Springs. That's the same as if you drove a pickup truck to the dock in Wakulla Springs with a ton of fertilizer, shoveled it into the spring every day. Something needs to change. And obviously the park rangers would not be encouraging such an activity, And the question is, why does the department, why does the state continue to permit our springs to be polluted? Nearly all of Florida's major springs have suffered from nitrate pollution for years. Yet to date, the department has not restored a single spring to its ecological health. Because of the cities of Tallahassee's large investment in their advanced wastewater plant, there actually exists the possibility that Wakulla Springs, now the largest freshwater spring in the world, could once more be a crystal bowl of light, as it used to be described. But this will not happen without meaningful action, and the action has to take place now, not waiting 5 years. So the meaningful things that we can attack and we can correct are the septic system south of the Cody Scar. That's where our attention has to be centered. Right now, our BMAP plan has missed an opportunity to meaningfully address saving Wakulla Springs. How many days are the glass bottom boats running? And yes, I know that's due to tannics and not necessarily due to nitrogen. I understand that, but it's all a combination. So counting on the legislature and counting on state regulatory agencies to take meaningful action on our groundwater issues is something that we cannot reasonably expect to happen, as witnessed by the history and the current BMAP plan draft that has come forward. And if we can influence any of the people involved in this process, I think we have an obligation to do so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Our next presentation is going to be by Les Harrison, our Wakulla County Extension Director. He's going to introduce the new 4-H Youth Development Extension Agent.
Good evening, gentlemen. In the centennial year of the Florida Extension Service, I would like to thank you for your continued support of our cooperative effort to offer education and information which is unbiased and based on university research. As such, I would like to introduce our new 4-H agent, Eric Westbrook, who will start Thursday this week on the 23rd. Eric is went to high school here in Wakulla County. He is an accomplished equestrian and has accomplished and a 4-H alumni and has accomplished quite a bit in the horse end of things. So we look forward to your
Say that right.
Hey. I didn't say which end of the horse. So, given that, again, we appreciate your support. We look forward to you stopping by the Extension office and let us show you around as to the many activities here that your foresight has supported throughout the years.
Thank you.
I'd like to say something about Mr. Harrison. Mr. Harrison probably has more knowledge about everything than anybody in the county. He writes an article in the paper, I believe, every Thursday, maybe?
Yes, sir.
If you've not been reading his articles, you need to read his articles because he knows a whole lot about everything. So.
Thank you very kindly.
And welcome.
Welcome, Eric.
Thank you. Appreciate it, Eric.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Okay, next is we're going to have our recognition of our Keep Wakulla County Beautiful Landscaping Project at the County Commissioners Complex by David Edwards, the County Administrator.
Could I have Keep Wakulla County Beautiful folks and anyone else who helped with the beautification of our Commission Complex?
Miss Arts couldn't make it, David?
No, Miss Arts, she's not here. What we'd like to do is to have a moment. We're going to give you a plaque, award you with a plaque for thankfulness for the work that Keep Wakulla County Beautiful did and the countless volunteers for the beautification of our commission building. For those who haven't seen it, you need to go look at it. It's absolutely fantastic. Use native species. The project really turned out well. Therefore, on behalf of the BoCC and staff, I would like to present a certificate of appreciation to Keep Wakulla County Beautiful and all their efforts involved in landscaping beautification at the County Commission Complex.
I have to say thank you. On behalf of everyone involved, it was definitely a joint effort spearheaded by former Commissioner Lynn Arts, who was deeply committed to the environment. Lynn successfully applied for the Florida Wildflower Foundation's La Florida Land of Flowers community grant. That grant is funded by license plates of the Florida State Wildflower license plates. Lynn personally donated money, and Keep Wakulla County Beautiful purchased the remaining large amount of plants by donated money that we raise year-round, and we thank our sponsors for that. Betsy Smith was invaluable for the third time, making sure that we adhere to our commitment for sustainability of every landscape project throughout this courthouse area. Thank you, Betsy. And we absolutely could not do what we do without the support of the NJROTC. Ron Huddleston and Michael Gonzalez make sure we have able bodies willing to and ready when the call goes out that we have a project. We want to thank the NJROTC. I joke and say I don't see the same cadets on 2 projects in a row because they probably say, that old lady works me too hard. We want to recognize the Sarracenia chapter for their donation and for the selection of suitable native plants for the site, advice on placement, and of course to Cleve Fleming and Brent Pelt and ESG Services for their donation of the mulch, which made an incredible difference. We had approximately 378 volunteer hours to transform the grounds of the complex. We worked in oppressive heat, rain, and pain, and to give a more sustainable look to the Commission complex, to be enjoyed by the thousands of people that drive by there every day. Keep Wakulla County Beautiful coordinated the 378 hours, which constitutes an in-kind donation to the county, according to Keep America Beautiful's volunteer hour total of over $8,000, not to mention the $1,690 we spent on plants. So KWCB has a great board led by President Steve Cushman. Our board members and volunteers work year-round to improve this community because we care. Thank you again. We greatly appreciate the county commissioners for your support.
Thank you. I appreciate all you do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Our next presentation is going to be given by Chuck Hess, who's the Park Advisory Committee Chairman. He's going to be giving a presentation regarding tree mitigation plan for Azalea Park trail renovation.
Okay. So I had a real nice PowerPoint presentation here, and
I didn't break it,
see it. I'm sure you tried. Okay, well, here's the situation. We looked, as a Park Advisory Committee, we looked at the parks in the county and what really needs to be done with our efforts. And Azalea Park is one of the really high-use parks in the county. And if you have some really nice pictures of the trail in Azalea Park, and you see all this uneven surface, orange paint to warn people that it's dangerous. So one of the first things we addressed is how do we fix Azalea Park. And we ended up, there was a grant available. We could get a grant money to build a trail through Azalea Park, but it had to be 12 feet wide to get the grant. So when you look at a 12-foot wide trail going through Azalea Park, it really doesn't work because there's 490 trees in Azalea Park. So we had to redesign the trail to try to mitigate the damage to the trees. So there were a lot of trees where places where we could move the trail to the side, one side or the other, to allow us to get by the trees. But sometimes you have trees side by side, 8 feet apart. Trail goes right through between. Somebody's got to go. And so we went through the whole park, walked the trail about 6 times. We had ended up taking out 26 trees, 23 trees.
They are pine trees, Chuck?
Well, mostly pine trees. There were a few times we had to go, and when we chose the trees, we chose trees that were going to be there for a long time. So we have a lot of loblolly in the park that have a max age of about 120 years. You know, right now they're at 80, 70, 80, 90 years old. So they only got about 30 years left. So those are the first things that, you know, we have to get rid of those. If we have a choice, those are the ones that go. So if we have a longleaf here, which could be 300 to 500 years old, I mean, can last that long, compared to a loblolly that lasts 100 years, we said, well, let's move over, take out the loblolly, and move around the longleaf. Try to mitigate the damage so the park is sustainable for a longer period of time. We took out 5% of the trees. It's, you know, we really walked it a long time to really make sure we could minimize the tree damage to the park. But you probably, when they start cutting, it's going to look like a lot of trees are coming down because there's a lot of wood in those trees. And so you'll get some complaints, and just wanted you to be a heads up on when the project starts. All right?
If you need some more help on that, I happened to meet with some people accidentally at McDonald's, a table of about 6 men, and they got all kinds of good ideas to help you design that park. they can really help you if you'll...
Well, the park, the trail is just, this is just to put the trail in, and we're trying to keep the same footprint as we had. It's just the expansion requires it. We did have one area where the trail had left the park boundary and gone into the right-of-way, and we moved that back onto the park. And so just things that had to be done as we cleaned up the trail.
Would there be any way to create an informative sign that people can see as they're driving by that lets them know this is about the trail, so whenever they see the trees coming down, the sign will pretty much let them know why they're coming down? Or
yes, we will do that.
Okay. That's up to I just went through and looked at what needs to come, what we should save and what we should take out.
We're getting ready to get that cranked up. We're now getting all the final plans done and everything. So.
Yeah, your time frame, when do you...
Yeah, we'll have the final plans and everything next week. Isn't that right, Brett?
Yeah.
When do you start work?
Brett Hammond said we'll have the plans next week.
Yeah, I know, but when do you start work?
Just right after he gets the plans to us.
And how long will it take?
It'll take about a month and a half, and the improvements that we're going to make will turn the park. We'll take care of the tree root problem in the park, as well as we're going to put a new surface there, brand new asphalt, brand new base, brand new asphalt, as well as a cushioned walking surface. Therefore, it'll be like a track. So therefore, anybody wants to see the we'll have the PowerPoint presentation as well as more information about the trail. It'll be on our website tomorrow, linked to this meeting.
I assume they have to be taken out with a big excavator or something, right, Chuck? I mean, a big excavator's got to go in the park and take these trees out, I assume.
Probably just get a tree surgeon to go.
Probably get a tree surgeon just drop them down.
Yeah.
I mean, you
Partially
can't build the trail over a stump, obviously.
Well, we'll take the stump out. Yeah.
Right. Stump's going to come out.
That's right.
But
big pine stumps are known to be tough, is all I was saying.
Yeah.
hey.
Anyway,
Okay, thank you.
Put a wood
thank you,
pin on
Chuck.
it, chew it up.
Thank you for explaining that.
Thank you, Chuck.
Our next speaker is going to be Miss Janice Aiken with chat, speaking on the chat announcement regarding the dog park.
And while y'all are getting your handouts, I'd just like to say thank you too for all that you guys do, and for the staff, Paige, and the rest of the staff, and even Mr. Edwards. And
thank you.
I know his job's not easy. Do thank you. I'm the president of CHAT. If you don't know what CHAT is, it means it stands for Citizens for Humane Animal Treatment. And we do have some more board members in here today. If you guys wouldn't stand, because this is about the board. And where's Ann? Yeah, and Ann's back there. So anyway, I'm going to give you a little bit of history, and only to show, and for those that don't know, that CHAT has been here. We're established in this community, and so you know everybody's on the same page about what's going on with CHAT. CHAT started as the Wakulla Humane Society back in the early 1980s. There was no animal shelter in this county. Dogs that were killed on the roadsides were picked up, taken to the dump. Dogs were running free. The sheriff's office was dealing with it. Around 1993, some funds were raised. We are a nonprofit, and we raised funds and partnered with Wakulla County and built a our first facility. It wasn't great, but it was good, and it did the job. Then in 2001, we partnered again with the county and citizens and businesses in the county to build a very nice adoption center, and we operated the adoption center up until January of this year, when we decided, because we could not get a memorandum of agreement with you guys that we could live with, that was in line with our mission, we decided that we needed to leave the adoption center. So now we've been gone less than a year. Our major projects right now are Pet Meals on Wheels, where we've partnered with the Senior Citizen Center. We found out that the seniors that were receiving the meals were giving their meals to their pets, which meant the seniors themselves were not getting the nourishment that they needed. So now we buy food, the community buys food, takes it down to the Senior Citizen Center, and they bag it and get it out to the seniors that have pets. We're doing Operation Catnip, which is where we are trying to round up all of our community cats, and some people, they're wild cats, but many of them were pets that got dumped in the woods and became wild, no fault of their own. We're rounding them up, trying to, we spay and neuter them with volunteers, volunteer members, and just people from across the county and from in Tallahassee, and vets who volunteer their time, our local vets.
Dr. Griggs is one of them.
Dr. Griggs, we always do it down at his place, so he's been fantastic, and well, there's more of the vets, so it's really great. And then we also have been doing the Kind News magazines for the 3rd and 4th grade students for a long, long time. Okay, so we're here today to talk about a conceptual plan, or not, the idea of a dog park in Wakulla County. We've talked to people. A lot of people love the idea, but when you really get down to it, will it be used? And that's the biggest thing, because we're talking about an investment of probably, I mean, it depends on how much in-kind service we get. 30 minimum, 30,000, probably more like 40, and it could get up to 50,000 if we do it right. Mr. Moore, if those 6 men have any greenbacks in their pockets and they want to come help us on this park, we'd like to know their names. So, you know, it's...
I don't know if they got any greenbacks. They got lots of ideas.
Oh, well, we all have a lot of ideas, and that's okay. That's what it takes, is a lot of brainstorming.
You can see them at 6 o'clock at McDonald's any morning.
No. Okay, so what we're talking about is just a place that our community can go, take their dogs. It'll be fenced in. There'll be a side for large dogs and a side for small dogs. And if you know anything about dog parks, you understand how they work. If you don't, I just, because for the sake of time, ask you to Google it and do some research. But basically, Chad is willing to pay for the infrastructure, the fencing, the sodding or the seating, water stations, the poop bags and dispensers, trash cans, benches, covered facility so people can sit under it when it's shady, when it's sunny. We'd also like, well, let me back up. We'd like to have the dog park over by the One Stop Community Center, because there's land there, and right now we don't have funds to build anything else. If it came to a point one day that you did have the funds to build a wonderful swimming pool and all those things that, you know, would be nice to have, the good thing about the dog park is that it's just chain link fences. It can be picked up and moved, so we could do that in 5, 10, 20 years. So right now, what we would need from the county is basically for you to consider providing the land, assistance with all the required applications and documents, you know, put us together with the right people, the planning department, the review and approval of the site plans, any legal reviews, because there are things that I'll talk to you about in a minute, come up with the park rules, the clearing, water to the park, and electricity to the park, and then ongoing mowing and liability insurance. So on your document, there's some ideas of some proposed rules, and I do believe in full disclosure, and what I mean by that, your last 2 pages are some pros and cons. We always like to hear about the pros, but the reality and the devil is in the cons. So before we do encounter or engage in a project like this, we need to have all those cons covered and understand it. So basically, I'm just here to let you know that Chad is interested in giving back to this community again in a partnership with the county. This park would be for the community. It wouldn't be Chat's park. It's, you know, just like the adoption center was the county's adoption center. We just ran it. We would probably put together a team, a steering committee for the park. There's some suggestions in this document. Be members from Chat's board, members from the Wakulla County offices, one of your guys, and then maybe somebody from at large from the community. But anyway, a governing board. So where we are right now is just giving this information to you guys, letting you think about it. Help us, you know, let us know what the next steps are. I have a few on the next page, on page 3. Which if you want to go forward, I guess we would meet with the right people, determine any code or design requirements, and then after that's complete, we'll know what we need to do as far as getting quotes. We'd go out and get our quotes. I don't know if this would have to be, since it's our money and we're getting it done and basically donating it to the county, if we would have to go through your bidding process, but you will tell us what we have to do. And then if we'll bring all those figures and all your requirements back to the Chat board, and then that's when the Chat board will vote, because that's when we'll do the memorandum of understanding or agreement, and that's where the devil's in the details. Okay?
Howard had brought this up under discussion. I think it was pretty favorable to at least look at it.
Well, Grant Peoples really originated the idea for our county, and he had looked at various areas of lands that the county had. I think he'd be a pretty important person to get into the mix.
I guess the next step would be to get with David and come up with a plan, David, that you could present to us, because we got to have it as an agenda item.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all agree letting him work on that?
I agree.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our awards and presentations. Next, we have our consent items. Do I have a motion to approve?
Approve the consent agenda?
We have a motion made and second to approve consent agenda. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes. Okay, Louis, we're going to move into our planning and zoning. We have one item tonight to consider.
Mr. Chairman, first a couple housekeeping items. First of all, this is the first of 2 public hearings. You'll only be taking and considering comments tonight. There won't be a final vote. However, in accordance with Section 24.01 of your code, each commission member does need to disclose any contact they have received from interested parties, lobbyists, or representatives, or any other third parties concerning this application. Commissioner Merritt?
On advice of my attorney, Heather, I've been advised to recuse myself because of possible work I may get in the future. I'm not saying I agree with her, but I am listening to her.
Well, actually, that came from the Florida Commission on Ethics, and they said it could go either way, but in an abundance of caution, they did advise an abstention from this vote.
It said to her then. Yeah.
I've talked with several of the homeowners, and I've also talked to Mr. Boynton.
I've received emails, and I've talked to several of the homeowners in Flower Subdivision.
I have not asked you this previously, but in light of what Randy brought up, I have financed several of the houses in the Flowers and would hope to in the future. So does that put me in a recuse situation?
Yes.
This vote's getting aired real quick.
Well,
maybe we should ask. We're not voting tonight anyway.
No, you're not voting
Why
tonight,
don't you ask
but we
for
can
official opinion? Because I thought about that. You know, I mean, I'm an engineer. A homeowner could buy a lot and ask me to do engineering, or they could ask somebody else, or somebody else could go to Ralph. Since we're not voting tonight, why don't we get an official opinion, if you would, please? Because I think it's our obligation to vote if we can. I mean, it's easier for us to recuse ourselves, of course, because then we don't have to take heat from either side, but would you do that for us and get a
You guys will have to request the official opinion. I can help you. It
You
has
can
to
help
come
us.
from
Okay.
you.
Good enough.
Until we hear back from the official opinion, do they need to?
We're not voting.
We're not taking a vote
I
tonight.
mean, not
No
to
vote
vote, but
tonight.
as far as the discussion, can they enter the discussion, or do they need to recuse from the
No, there's a
discussion?
peculiar twist in Florida statutes on the voting conflict. If you're an elected official, you have to recuse from your vote if there's an actual conflict. If you're an appointed official, which you're not, you can't participate in discussion or vote, but elected officials are still allowed to participate in discussion. That said, I think it's best practices that if you're not going to vote, that you don't participate in the discussion, but that's just...
I'm going to participate. I mean, I don't think it's breaking any law.
No, you're not breaking law.
Right.
You are not.
And to answer your question, I have received several emails. I've forwarded them to Paige. I've had one phone conversation with Miss Andrea Oliver.
And I'm going to forward the emails to Paige as well, in the event they were duplicate or might have received one that might not have been a duplicate.
So I've received the emails that have come to all of the commissioners, I believe. I attended a meeting with some of the homeowners in the Flowers subdivision. I've spoken by phone with at least one of them, and also in person with one.
And Heather, given the fact that I may be voting in the future, I have phone with several citizens out there, emails with several citizens, and I've also spoken to the applicant, just to cover my bases.
Okay. If there's anyone in the room who is going to provide any information on this application, that means if you're going to stand up and speak
If
at all,
anyone's filled out a speaker card, you just need to stand and take an oath. Anyone who
please
has
stand
filled out
up
a
to be
speaker
sworn.
card.
Raise your hand. Do you swear or affirm to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. I'll turn it over to Louis.
Yes, Commissioners, this item is for, let's see, major modification to the Flowers. This phases 1, 2, and 3 planned unit development, and phases 2 and 3 preliminary plats. This is a major modification to the PUD because of the extensive changes to the nature of this planned unit development. Attachment 3 details in strike-through and underlined format what the changes are. Just briefly, the biggest change on this is there's a borrow pit that's being proposed in the northwest corner of the site. The minimum dwelling size of 1,700 square feet was being struck. Underground utilities, the requirement is being struck. There's some significant phasing changes. There were some concerns by staff that are with this proposal that were spelled out in the staff report, primarily dealing with consistency with the land uses, a residential subdivision, and the borrow pit. We did get some conditions added to attachment 3 that address some safety issues and compatibility issues with the borrow pit. But because of the significant changes and the concern, staff is not recommending approval, but is requesting board direction. A lot of these issues were discussed at the Planning Commission hearing. The Planning Commission did recommend, or they made a motion to recommend several changes that are listed on page 3 of 6, and these are additional conditions that would be attached to the PUD if their recommendation moved forward. Now this vote went to a 3-to-3 vote, so officially it moves forward without a recommendation from the Planning Commission. Again, staff is recommending board direction on this. I can give you some guidance on recommended conditions or more details of what our concerns are.
Mr. Chairman, what I'd like to do before we have the citizens come up, let's get the applicant up here and see what he has agreed to as far as the conditions go, so at least citizens will know what they're speaking about.
Well, I was going to have the applicant speak first, but before we do anything, I will need a motion and a second to move ahead.
No.
We don't. Okay.
Okay,
All right.
I would like to ask that because our planning director has not given us direction, and because this is a rather complex path that this Flowers subdivision has taken over more than a decade and a half, or about a decade and a half. I would like to have staff begin at the beginning of this process so that everyone can understand where this is coming from. This is not like someone coming before us and offering a PUD. And so there's a whole history behind this, and I think we need to understand that history, and the citizens need to understand that history.
Are you prepared to do that, Louis?
Well, I'll do my best. I think we can give you a thumbnail sketch of...
Louis, if you can give a quick synopsis, and then I'll go from that to Ben Boynton, and then after Ben Boynton, I have a lot of citizens who have filled out the speaker cards, and then we'll allow the citizens to speak after Ben Boynton, and then we'll speak amongst ourselves amongst the commission. So, Louis, if you don't mind beginning.
Yeah, and just briefly, there was most recently a comp plan amendment done for a special area plan amendment that reduced the natural state area on this PUD. The natural state area was a requirement that came out of a comprehensive plan amendment that was approved years ago, and the comprehensive plan amendment allowed the density on this property because there were concerns and a little bit of give and take when you increase density. There were a lot of requirements that were placed on this development. Among them was natural state area. I believe it was 45% over the entire development, and that was later reduced to 20%. Again, that's basically it. It did start with a plan amendment years ago. And actually, yeah, it is spelled out in your agenda request. This comprehensive plan issues start way back in 2003. The special area plan requirements go back to 2004 when a lot of this came about. And you know, at that time, after the plan amendment was done, the PUDs were approved, and those PUDs had conditions that were included. PUDs are a custom zoning district that establish when you develop a PUD, you have to establish things like what your allowed uses are, what your prohibited uses are, what your setbacks are. This one included minimum unit size of 1,700 square feet.
Is there any other PUD in the county that has a minimum house size in it?
I believe there probably is. I can't think of any offhand, but it's not totally uncommon for that to be included in there.
All right. So next we're gonna. Do you have any? Is that it, Louis?
Well, that's it for my thumbnail history. If you have any questions, you know, and again, we're asking board direction. I don't want to leave you directionless. We'd be glad to tell you what our concerns are. You know, it does not violate any of the comp plan or land development code, but we did have some concerns, so that's why we did not recommend in favor of this.
But you didn't recommend against it either.
No, that's right. I mean, we typically, with a PUD or with a rezoning, unless there's a violation of something in the comprehensive plan or the land development code, we typically do not recommend denial of it, and we typically don't recommend in favor of something unless there have been changed conditions or there would be an improvement in you know, decreased density, increased natural state area, things like that.
Okay. So so one question that jumps out at me is, this is a residential PUD, correct?
Yes.
In a residential PUD, is there any place for a borrow pit?
Let me ask a background question if I could, Howard. All we have is PUD, right? We don't have residential and non-residential PUD, do we?
That's correct. The PUD is a custom zoning district. You establish the land uses. Now, a borrow pit obviously was not included in the original PUD. That's why this is being brought forth as a major revision to a PUD, which is essentially a new PUD, as if he was starting over, to add that land use.
So, and I got that. So I'm going to have a lot of questions then, and a lot of questions for Louis right now before we get into citizens, I think.
Are you wanting to address them now or
I
later?
want to address them now before the citizens get up and speak. I have questions for Louis. You know, we're not voting on this right now. Dealing with a PUD and dealing with, and I'm going to go back in some of the history in a little bit, but dealing with the PUD and dealing with that we don't have residential and we don't have thing. If someone was coming forward with a PUD and wanted to have a mixed use and they wanted to present a plan, and they could do that when they started this. When they originally came forward with the PUD, they can say, we want mixed use. We want houses. We want little commercial area. We want a borrow pit. We want a zoo. We want a garbage dump. Whatever they want. They could have asked for that. But we have people that have bought into this PUD based on it being an apparent residential neighborhood. And now, so to speak, the rug is being pulled from under them. But in 2001, St. Joe wanted to do something with that piece of land. It's 360 acres according to the notes I took. The board didn't transmit that. This piece of land has a long history. It also has a history of having been changed several times. It also has a history of the developer promising the county things that he did not fulfill. One of which was to, well, just how strange this is, and I don't know if Louis can answer this, but this development went forward with the promise of the developer bringing sewer at his expense to the Bluxom cutoff area. The school was then started to be built based on that timeline. The county had to step in, the school board had to step in, we had to come up with money because the developer didn't do that. But what the developer did do, he was able to do, and I don't know if you can answer this question, how was the developer able to start to allow houses to be built and sold and not have septic and not have sewer? How is that okay to do from a planning perspective?
Not have septic. They didn't have a septic tank.
They had a big cistern where all this stuff
That's
flowed
right. They
into.
were doing the pump out.
And then I've never heard of this being sort of an okay thing to do. In planning and zoning, how does this occur?
Yeah, and that was before my time as director, but there was, in my understanding, there was an agreement to allow a pump out of a temporary, I guess a holding tank, for lack of a better word, yeah, temporarily until sewer was built.
Yeah. Anyway, this started at 368 acres and is now 468 or thereabouts. I'm not quite sure where we are right now, but somewhere it's increased almost 100 acres. So this is a large subdivision. People have been moving in, people have been building houses, and I think people have an expectation of what they've bought into. So from a planning and zoning perspective, I don't understand why you hesitate to give us a clear direction, and because for me it seems pretty clear, but my question also is, how does this benefit in any way, shape, or form the county, or how does this benefit the homeowners in that subdivision, PUD, phases 1, 2, and 3?
Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely correct. Whenever you're changing a PUD where there are people living, it's already has phase 1 platted. That's a serious thing, and that's why we want to make sure it gets appropriate notification. As far as benefits to the public, I mean, I think, you know, that is where we are looking. That's where we are not recommending approval of it. We're recommending board direction. You know, again, I I hesitate to say that we're going to recommend denial of it unless, you know, Mr. Boynton has violated something in the comprehensive plan and land development code. But, you know, take that for what it's worth. Is you know, we're requesting board direction, and you know, I'm as you know that I'm more than willing to recommend in favor of projects when necessary.
I'll stop here. I have more that I can enter into the record, but that might come later.
I'm gonna, and at this point, I'm gonna ask Ben Boynton to come up and speak, and then after Ben Boynton, we'll begin to call up the citizens who have filled out the speaker cards.
Commissioners, Ben Boynton, speaking on behalf of this PUD change. At the direction of the Planning Commission, I have recommended changes to the PUD that reflect the same changes that the Planning Commission desired me to do. That includes that we fence the stormwater or the bore pit / lake for public safety, that we continue to use 1,700 square feet as our minimum per house, both for the Flowers Phase 1 and Phase 2. Those are larger lots. They have natural state inside the outside of the lot itself. So there's homeowners association owns that land that's between the lots. It's a different configuration really than Phase 3, where you have smaller lots, not half acre but 1/3 acre. The size of the lots have not changed on any of the PUDs, on any of the plats. The only thing that I have done in error, because I did not realize that it was going to offend people, where I had opted to reduce the square footage of the heated and cooled to what was on the covenants as they sit today of 1,400 square feet. That is not considered now. When I did the original covenants, I had it at 1,600 square feet in violation of the PUD. Unbeknownst, I would have done it if I had remembered that I had done it in the PUD. I didn't remember. I did 1,600 square feet. That was at the very beginning, and everybody bought in with the 1,600 square foot criteria, not the 1,700 square foot criteria. I have gone back, and we're going to make 1,700 on Phase 1 and 2. I'm asking the board to approve to let me do 1,600 square feet on the PUD for the Flowers Phase 3 only because those lots are smaller and it makes more economic sense. As far as the overhead utilities are concerned, what drove that, and also the reason that I'm doing subphases, is that Talpin Electric, who is the energy provider for that neighborhood, has changed their policy. And it used to be that they came in and they did overhead at no charge to the developer. The developer paid underground. The additional cost of running it underground was paid at the front end to Talpin Electric. Well, they've changed it. Now the developers have to go in, take their money, and do underground and overhead. You have 3 years to sell your project out, or they do not refund the money. They keep it. Okay. I'm doing Scenic Stream, which is a neighborhood not far from the Flowers, and I'm doing a combination of overhead and underground so that the lines would not be seen crossing the streets. I have interior lots, and the power lines stay inside the lot, so when you look down the street you don't see the crossing of the lines. It's additional money. I thought it was going to be good for the neighborhood. I thought it would clean it up, make it look nicer, so I was willing to spend the money. In that the neighborhood absolutely does not want me to do any overhead. That also has been agreed that we'll only do underground in Phase 1, 2, and 3. So that is off the board. That has been changed. Louis, is there anything else that the Planning Commission recommended that I've forgotten to talk about?
Can I ask Ben a question?
Yeah.
Ben, a lot of the concerns, and I think justifiably so, is that I know this borrow pit is across a creek or whatever, but it's part of the subdivision. And you know, I used to have Cleve's job. I don't know if anybody knew that or not, but the county would go dig borrow pits, and then years later we get a call back from the person that had the property saying, the county's responsible for this, you need to come put a fence, you need to come do this. Is there any way to cut that piece of property out, meets and bounds, where the homeowner association never has to worry about liability for it? Because I know what they're concerned about is 10, 20 years from now, somebody's going to get in there and get hurt or something, and they're going to get sued, or they're going to have to maintain it. And that's a real concern.
And that's my concern, and that's why I put in the PUD that it could be conveyed to an individual, an entity, or an HOA. In this particular case, I have not allowed that piece of property to be incorporated into the Phase 1 PUD or the Phase 2. I'm talking about plat now. It's not. It's strictly Phase 3.
Why can't you take it out altogether and just say not included in this plat, and then if you want to do a borrow pit, come back and do that?
Well,
separate property ID.
Because I've already done it correctly that way. I've already put in my PUD that I can do it that way, so I don't have to redo anything. I've done it right. So it's my intent to build this lake and convey it to a third party down the road, not the HOA. I agree with you. I don't think the HOA. That's why I put in the PUD modification that it can be an entity, an individual, or an HOA. So if the HOA does not want it, it can go to an individual. I can continue to own it, or I can convey it to someone else.
I mean, I don't see any circumstance where they would want it. You know what I'm saying? It's a
well, and that's why, and the planning commission, the attorney for the county objected to me putting those conditions on there. They wanted it just to go to the HOA, and my comment was, no, because they may not want that liability. I've got to be able to convey it to somebody that does. So that's why I put individual, entity, or HOA.
I think Randy's got a good idea. I mean, why couldn't it just be separated out and just be totally not a part of the conversation?
That's fine. I have no problem.
Not part of Phase 1, 2, or 3.
Geographically separated by that. I guess
I'm all for that. I'm all for that. That's not a problem.
You said that would relieve them with a lot of liability, wouldn't it?
Well, they would not have the liability anyway.
Huh?
You're talking taking it out of the plat entirely?
Take it out of the flowers.
Just totally deeding it into its own section.
It's just a meets and bounds piece of property.
You'd have to come back and then rezone that.
I don't see a reason to do that because the Flowers Phase 1 and Flowers Phase 2 do not own that dirt. It's part of Phase 3. I haven't developed Phase 3. It's going to be 5, 6, 7, 8 years before I even develop Phase 3.
But you're asking for a PUD that would encompass all 3 phases. So, I mean...
Right, I am.
So it's gonna encompass it unless you divide it back out.
Well, no. The way we did the PUD was each phase has its own covenants. There's not a single covenant for all 3 PUDs.
We got nothing to do with covenant. So Ben, if he cut it out, meets and bounds, and left it zoned PUD, he could do that, right?
How much land are we talking about?
About 7 acres, 6 or 7 acres.
And is it currently zoned agricultural?
Zag.
No,
PUD.
it's in a PUD.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
So he couldn't cut it out, meets and bounds, and leave it zoned PUD, and then come back?
He'd have to rezone it to ag or something.
But it wouldn't be in the plat, so he'd have to come back and...
But it doesn't matter. Excuse me. It doesn't matter because I can deed it to anyone as it sits today. There is no reason to do that. It has the ability to be conveyed out. The HOA is not limited to that liability. They absolutely are not. Phase 3 owns that dirt. Not Phase 1, not Phase 2, Phase 3. When I build this and make it an attraction, they may want it. If they don't want it, I'm going to keep it, or I'm going to give it to somebody else, or I'm going to sell it to someone else. Okay? It does not have to come out. Phase 3 is the entity that owns that dirt.
You do not mind doing that. It's over here, Ben.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm deaf.
Me too. So we could both be looking 2 different ways. You don't mind taking that out of Phase 3 then?
I don't want to go and do all this stuff when I don't have to do it. I'm ready. I need this thing to go forward. Okay? I'm telling you that it's not an issue. For me to go back and replat this thing is very expensive for me. Okay? It's expense I don't need to spend.
Why would it be a replat?
That's what they said they had to do.
Yeah, if I could clarify,
She just said it would not be a replat.
when you cut out a piece of land from a preliminary plat, you've in effect subdivided. So for that reason, we don't allow you to cut off a piece of land and say not included. You've created a lot because you've cut it out, so it's included in the preliminary plat. Now, if the concern is the homeowners controlling it, we could just add some language to the PUD that says the homeowners will not be responsible for that parcel where the borrow pit is located. I think that's how but it does have to be a part of the preliminary plat.
Legally enforceable, Heather, to just say they're not responsible for it? I mean, what happens 30 years from now, a kid goes out there and gets hurt? With the PUD the way it is today, if we adopt it?
Ben says that he can do what Louis just said.
What I've
Property
done...
owner.
Hold on, let's let Heather. Go ahead.
I mean, I think you would need to do, right now, as Mr. Boynton mentioned, it says that it can be conveyed to the homeowners association, which would be the Phase 3 homeowners association, an individual or another entity.
That's right.
And if you took out
HOA.
the HOA,
Then that makes it...
then that would be in the PUD, which would be a restriction on the property, and they would not be able to convey.
And they would have no liability whatsoever on that piece of property?
I mean, there's no guarantee that they're not
You can get
going to try. I can't ever say that.
You can get an attorney to sue the moon.
Do they have any more liability for that piece of property than they do for a piece of property across the road?
I wouldn't think so, no.
So it's the same risk for any of... I know you're not going to tell me yes or no, but...
Well, they're not going to access through the HOA. It's going to be access through...
it's got a different access point.
Well, you understand the issue is they're concerned about future liability, and we talked about
I understand that. I cannot give the HOA, who is not my client, any sort of guarantee about no future liability. What we can control is whether the property is transferred to them in the future.
Okay,
If it's owned by an individual, that HOA has no liability.
The individual would be the person they would go after.
Well,
no liability.
she just mentioned that she can, in the documents, we can just say that the homeowners has no part of this.
That's fine.
Piece of property.
Do they have any more liability with that area than they do with my house right up the road then?
Not if they're not...
Same risk, same liability potential?
I wouldn't think it would be exactly the same since, I mean...
They're contiguous to it, I understand that. But if they're not on the document in any way...
They're not the property owner.
They're not the property owner.
They don't have control or, I mean...
the only thing that concerns me is it's still going to be lot, one block, whatever, of this subdivision. Somebody can come back and say, well, if they're on the list, I want to sue
and that's why I can't say there's never going to be any way they'd be drug into court.
There's
That's
no
why
way...
I thought it, like it broke out.
There's no way just to deed it out to its own separate property that's not even a part of Zone 3 anymore? I mean, Phase 3 anymore, just it be
Flowers
its
Phase
own...
4 with Lot A?
It's considered to be a different phase. It's got a separate phase.
It's not listed as that on the plat, is it?
It is listed as a separate phase on the plat.
Well, I'm saying, the borrow pit itself is listed as like 63H or something like that.
It's Lot 79, but it's Phase 3E.
Which is its own phase.
So it would have its own final plat?
Hold on, Mr.
that correct?
Kessler, hold on one second.
Let me just get an answer.
Yeah, I'm trying to follow up on this, yeah.
If it's Phase 3E, is that a thing that requires separate final plat, or is it like a block of a larger one? If it's a block of one, why not call it the Flowers Phase 4, and then we're not talking about this anymore, because it won't have nothing to do with Phase 3 or 2 or 1.
We could make a change to the PUD that way, but we could just do a change to the modification going forward. We don't have to go back and redo it.
That relieves some liability if it was just called Flowers Phase 4, Lot 1A?
I don't know that really... It might help a little bit. I don't think there's a huge risk at the present.
But see, the point...
I agree that they couldn't come back and sue Flowers Phase 1 or 2. I agree with that. But I'm talking about in the future, Phase 3, if something happened, and it's a block in Phase 3. I know the risk is very, very minimal, but if we can make it even less, why not do that?
I agree with that, if there'd be a way to put in Phase 4.
Change anything for you.
And I'm not developing Phase 3 for years, okay? We can get another legal opinion on this. My position is, once you deed a piece of property to an individual, that individual is responsible for that property. It does not go back to an HOA or to an association. That's not part and parcel of that.
Well, let's say
it doesn't matter if it's in the same
And I
plat.
understand that. Let's say that somebody buys it, makes a borrow pit, 20 years from now they say, I'm done digging, I don't want it anymore. I'll let the county have it for tax certificates. And what I'm suggesting may be an easy solution for you. Just call it Phase 4. And Heather said that
I
was
mean,
reduced. It's not gonna stop you.
it's at your direction. Everything is at your direction. I don't care. I just don't want this thing to get off track going forward.
But he's saying that.
Okay.
He's saying if you can do that without having him start all over again.
Excuse me.
Yeah, I mean, that's fairly minor change, and I think if we
Mr.
change the
Kessler.
language in the PUD that took out the HOA ownership of that would address that concern.
I think Commissioner Kessler's got a question.
Yeah, I got multiple questions. So let's start with Louis. If the PUD is not changed right now and a borrow pit is not approved, what happens to that land?
If the PUD is approved without the borrow pit, is that what
We have a PUD now. Pretend the board says, because the board has a lot of directions in PUD. The board can say tonight, we intend not to do anything. The PUD, the way it is, should stay. The board can do that. If the board did that, what would happen to the piece of dirt that is wanting to be turned into a borrow pit?
That area does not have any development on it, so it
just be-
remains.
What is it now? Is it part of the PUD though?
It's part of the PUD.
And what does it say it is? Just
Is it natural state area?
Natural
Yeah,
state
it's
area?
natural state area.
It's not. No, it is not natural state anymore. It's been changed, Louis.
or just says
Read
undeveloped land?
read that up. Read it and understand that we took and changed from 45 to 20. There is no natural state except the wetland. The wetland areas, there's 2 wetland areas on that property that is part of the natural state. The rest of it is not. That corner is just no man's land. There's not natural state. There's pine trees on there. There's hardwoods on there. It's empty land.
We're pulling Phase 3, but yeah, that area was not proposed for any lots or stormwater ponds
It
or
was
anything.
proposed for natural land. It's for natural
Yeah,
area.
it was undeveloped,
Okay.
remained undeveloped.
And so, right, great. So if the board does not approve this change in the PUD, which has been changed, how many times, Louis, did you say this PUD has been changed?
How many times is this? Oh, okay. Yeah, this PUD has not been changed. This is the only change to this PUD. It's gotten caught up in the special area plan that has been changed.
So
there's a PUD on the other side of Woodridge Road that has been adopted and
Okay.
and I believe changed, but
Okay, so this one hasn't been changed?
this one is not.
Except for changing the natural area.
Yeah, and that was part of the underlying land use.
That was a comp plan change, not a PUD change.
Okay. But, and I understand that.
Can I piggyback on that question before you
Sure,
move on?
sure.
Here's the basic question for me. If nothing changes, if the PUD stays exactly the way it is right now and we don't do any changes, is a borrow pit allowed currently?
No.
Or prohibited, or is there any restriction? Can he just do it, assuming he gets a state permit? Do we have the authority to stop him, or does he require our approval?
He requires our approval. It is not a permitted use in that PUD.
So to
currently.
have a borrow pit, the PUD must be changed.
Yes.
Okay. So now let's say if none of these other provisions were in there but the borrow pit, we would still require a PUD change. If that was the only thing he was looking for, is to have a borrow pit, we would still require a PUD change.
Yes.
So Ben, it seems to me that it's almost impossible to not deal with that. The fact that it's years down the road really doesn't help us at all.
Well, here's the deal. I'm not saying I'm not going to develop. I'm saying I'm not going to put residential lots on Phase 3 for years. I'm saying that I need that dirt today. I need to get my state permit today. I need to start mining that dirt, because each lot that I sell requires good dirt underneath it, good foundation dirt. You got to build the houses up high enough so they don't have flood problems. Okay, that dirt is very, very good road-based dirt, and it's very, very good for foundations for houses. That's the other part of my job, is I clear lots and I bring builders dirt for their homes and I spread it. That's 50% of my income. I need that. That is a perfect place for it. It goes straight out on 267. It's a long way from the residential phase 1. It's closer to phase 2. Phase 2 hasn't come online. It's even closer to phase 3. Phase 3 hasn't come online. The bore pit will be completed, and it will be a lake before the last phase of Flowers phase 3 is finished. It's got to be finished in its entire state of converting to a lake before that, according to the PUD that we wrote. The last phase of the residential part of Flowers phase 3 before it can get a final plat, that lake has got to be finished. That's
And
the condition.
There's a swamp between, or a creek.
It's a wetland area.
Between the borrow pit and phase 3.
That's right.
Why even build a lake? Nobody's ever going to see it.
That's right. There's what I'm doing is I'm leaving trees along 267 as buffers. The wetland area that goes between it sides up to 267 and the Apalachicola National Park Forest. On the other side of the wetlands is the stormwater ponds for phase 3. So there's another buffer of stormwater ponds.
But that creek is got trees in it you can't touch.
That's
it's
correct.
A wetland.
It
I'm
is.
saying the trees are, what, 30, 40 feet tall. It's Black Creek, isn't it? Right on Bloxham?
It's
It's what I'm saying is by virtue of the creek, it's geographically separated from any of the phases of the
It
fire.
is. It is. It has entrance onto 267. It will not go through the subdivision. Now,
Would you still have to do a plan unit change in order to make it a phase 4?
yes, anything that requires making that from, that is vacant land with no, as it sits today, there is nothing tied to that property. It's not natural state. It's a little bit of wetland, and that wetland is natural state, but the land that we're talking about cutting in for the bar pit is just sitting there. It has no restrictions. Okay, it's a perfect place for this.
He wouldn't have to do another PUD if we today decided to make that phase 4 instead of lot 79 block E. He wouldn't have to redo this whole thing. It's a minor change.
Well, yeah, I just asked Louis, and to do a borrow pit at all, we're going to have
No,
we have
that's
to
what I'm
change the
not-
PUD.
I understand that, but I'm saying
Make
just
it phase 4.
to change the designation on the preliminary plat he's proposing.
Well, if it goes to phase 4, like what you were saying, that does take the liability completely off of the homeowners association completely, and I think that would alleviate a lot of concerns that the homeowners association have with the bar pit.
It does, but what Louis is saying is that the land use in the PUD does not allow a bar pit. You've got to do a major PUD for the what you're doing is creating a land use.
That's not what we're talking about, Ben. We're not even talking about that. We're
I
talking
mean, I
about
think we have to talk about it, right?
It's a
Because
major
if I'm
PUD
following
change.
you,
It is. You're changing. All you're doing is phasing it.
if I'm following you, if he makes this phase 4, we want to deal with phase 1, 2, or 3. We can do that, and we can forget about phase 4. But he still would not have the ability to move forward with his borrow pit until we do deal with it, and we
I'm
do.
saying deal with that now, but just change the designation instead of phase 3E lot whatever, make
Right.
it its own phase. It's phase 4, that way it's not tied to the rest of the flowers at all.
Just add a phase.
Right.
And that's
That
fine. We
can go
can
in
do
and
that
add
without
phase
doing a
And
new
then
PUD. We
I
can just do a
encourage you to pull
modification.
up the aerial photo of this when you get a chance on Donnie Spartman's website, and you can really get a good look.
That would protect the homeowner association, but at the same time allow him immediate access to the dirt, correct?
Well, I mean, the biggest protection for the homeowners association is not owning it, and which Mr. Boynton's already indicated that he's amenable to putting that change in the HOA
But you
document
said
that they're not going
making
to own it.
phase 4 would make them not much less liable. If it's easy to do, I mean, just why not do it, is what I'm saying. It's not going to hurt him at all in
Doesn't
any
matter.
way, shape, or form.
I don't care. We could do it that way. Anything that would satisfy the commission in this light is fine. All I'm telling you is, this is a separate track. It's separated from everything else by the wetland areas. It has its own direct access under 267. I need the dirt. I'm asking you to let me get the dirt because it's very close to the lots that I'm building in the flowers, scenic stream, the hammocks. Look, these lots, some of them are low and they have to have dirt. It's just that simple. It is my livelihood. I'm not infringing on anyone's property values by this, and when it's all over with, I'm going to create a nice lake.
It looks like the creek's about 325 feet wide by measuring the aerial, just for information.
So if we kind of do just a quick rehash, if we put this out in phase 4, then that leaves us with phase 1 and 2 being 1,700 square feet minimum heated. Phase 3 would be 1,600 square feet minimum due to the smaller lot size. Phase 1, 2, and 3 would all have underground utilities, correct?
Correct. And I would have and I think it was a great idea, and I should have put it into the PUD as a safety, but having a fence around it, it's got to be done.
That's required by law anyway. One more thing I'd ask you if you would commit to before the citizens talk. Would you commit as a condition to agree to revise the restrictions in phase 1 and 2, which you are in control of, to reflect what the PUD document? They would match.
They've got to. See, that was
but you're the one that has to revise them, because the homeowners don't have control of that.
Yes.
And you'd do that as a condition of approval.
Well, what happens is, just to clarify this, the PUD is the overriding document.
I understand that, Ben, but the county is not typically in the business of enforcing minimum square footage, and I think it would...
No, it will be done. I mean, it will. That's just a given that it will be done.
You would commit to doing that?
Oh, absolutely. It's got to be done.
Making the homeowners association match, because they don't right now. So it doesn't have to be.
It doesn't, because I erred. It should have from the very beginning.
I know that's been another concern expressed.
Right. It was my mistake.
I have a question about the square footage. The agenda item says that you're looking for 1,600 square feet in phase 3, but if I read the current PUD for phase 3, it specifies 1,700.
That is correct.
So you are...
I'm asking for a reduction. When I did the 1,700 square feet, things were going great. Life was a dream. We went through a major recession, and 1,700, I would prefer that phase 1, 2 have 1,600 square feet. I would prefer it. It would make my life a lot easier. However, people out here do not want me to do it. I do not want to step on toes any more than I've already done. Okay? 1,700 square foot is fine. It's phase 1 and 2. I'm asking the commission, in that those lots are smaller and that they're far away from phase 1. And I also wanted, as a caveat, I want to say that I have had quite a bit of experience in doing this kind of thing, and Songbird is the one I'm going to bring up. Okay? In Songbird subdivision, I've had 3 separate kinds of houses. I had houses that were 1,600 to 2,400 square feet in the majority of the subdivision. On the back of it, I had 1,300 and 1,400 square foot houses. A separate builder. I had a totally different builder. I had one builder doing the houses that were 16 to 24, and another builder that did 1,300 and 1,400 square foot. Okay, I never had any problems. Okay. I never had anybody complain. People that lived in it, people that sold it, had no property decrease in values. The third thing I did was I had a gated community, 2,500 square foot minimum, just like I have in the Flowers. I have one street, Daffodil Cove, that I have made 2,500 square feet. I've got 2 houses in there. It's a slow sell on that street, but I'm hoping that things will come back and get right. But right now it's slow. But I'm committed to that because of the covenants. I'm committed to the people that live on that street that it's going to be 2,500 square feet. It will be. I don't care if I have to hold on to them to eternity. That's what's going to happen. When I did the gated community, and they built 3,000 square foot houses, I had independent builders that were different, coming in from all places in the county and city, Tallahassee, coming in and building those houses in that particular section. So I had multiple builders. I never had anyone complain about a 1,300 square foot house 1,000 yards from their doorstep. So I'm saying that the argument that may be made that you do 1,600 square foot, it's going to hurt our neighborhood, has not proven itself in Songbird. Okay? 100 square foot difference between a 17 and 16, you cannot physically see the difference looking at the house. What makes the difference is the quality of construction, which I have high quality of construction in that subdivision, 1, 2, and 3. The type of shingles, the type of materials, the appearance, the elevations, the colors, all that's controlled so that the values stay up. I've always prided myself in my subdivision's values staying up. You know, and who could predict the recession? That blew it out of the saddle. But other than that, everybody's enjoyed value increases, and it's going to come back. And those values are going to continue to go back when this recession is finally over. But we're still in the throes, Wakulla County is still in the throes of a recession. I don't care what Obama says.
Have you sold any homes in Phase 3 at all?
Phase 3 is not built.
Okay.
Phase 2 is not built. Phase 1 is selling better than any subdivision in Tallahassee, in Wakulla County. And the houses that are being built in Phase 1 are nice big houses. I am blown away by it. I am so happy I can't see straight that the values that people want to go in there and build real nice, because that's how I set it up. That's why I set this whole thing up. That's why I did Songbird, is to have nice houses for people to move to.
I'm going to, Commissioner Cashel, I'm going to let you say, but then after that, I'm going to let some of the citizens speak, and then we'll go back.
Okay.
While Mr. Boynton's up here, I want to really ask Mr. Boynton some questions.
Well, go
if you
ahead.
don't mind. And also, I would like to request that, and we spent a lot of time with Mr. Boynton right now, and I would request that the citizens be given some leeway because they are the other part of this affected two parties here. So and all I've heard for the most part is how to help Mr. Boynton, and that's fine, but there's also a whole bunch of homeowners out there that need help. So am I correct in making the conclusion that you're requesting the borrow pit so that you can make money?
Absolutely.
Okay. And that you built, but you just said about building Songbird because you wanted to build nice houses, but you really want to make money. That's what you do.
That's my business.
Right. And I have no problem with that as long as we're
Are you
clear
sure?
on it. Absolutely.
Okay.
I've owned small businesses myself. I've been a small businessman most of my life. So, like free enterprise, like building homes, but I also like the property rights of the citizens who own those homes.
I do too.
And they are in fear. And when you tell us right now that, you know, this won't affect their homes, that's a story that you're telling us. It may be true and it may not be true.
That's what history has told me.
Okay. Now, you had brought up the issue of the homeowners association, and I sort of understand how most homeowners associations work. But I'm told in this homeowners association that these homeowners, at least in phase 1, I'm not sure which phase we're talking about, will they ever get control of their homeowners association?
The documents go into specifically that, yes. That's what the documents do, is talk about just that one point. It's a whole article about it.
What's the build-out level, Ben, before they get, when the votes switch?
75%.
Sold lots or build-out?
No, sold.
Sold. Sold lots.
Is it 90? 90. It goes, well...
So,
oh, hold on.
Okay, so 90% is a pretty high threshold, and in reality, these people are maybe sitting for a decade or two without having control of their own homeowners association while they're paying, I assume they're paying homeowners association
Some people
fees.
are not.
Well,
most people
the people that are, you know, when I visited the homeowner,
Commissioner Cashler,
when I visited,
hold on just one second,
I
Mr.
want to say
Cashler.
that
I do want to ask the citizens, hold on, I do want to ask the citizens just to please refrain until we get to the portion that we have the speaker cards.
Okay.
Thank you.
I would could speak on that.
So when I visited there, I don't know if you guys have taken a ride through, I was shocked to see the, I don't know what the word is, unmaintenance, you know, size of the roads that are just, I mean, reducing the size of a road from 2 lanes to to really one lane in some places. You can't really drive two cars without being in the weeds. And these are on paved roads. So I'm
shocked too.
I'm very uncomfortable with the story we're hearing. I'm very concerned about the citizens and their property values and their property rights, and I'll stop there.
Can I ask Ben a
Thank you.
question along those lines, Ben? Is
Please.
that something, I know it has nothing to do with this PUD, but is that something you'd be willing to change that percentage on? Because you have control of the homeowners dollars, and just give it back to the homeowners, and they keep their own dues, and they maintain their own roads, and they fix whatever they want.
Okay, first of all, let me clarify a couple of things. The county owns the road. It's the county's responsibility to mow the shoulders. I did it for 3-4 years until the county accepted the roads. If you go back to you look at your own regulations, okay? Look at your own regulations. The county is responsible for mowing the shoulders of the roads, not the HOA. The only thing the HOA is doing with that money, and I'm telling you that just this year is the first time that we got in the black. I've been financing out of my pocket the red times. Luckily, I thank the Lord, we've got accounting pages, and I don't think you guys have been getting them, but I will have the association manager email. He's got your emails. He should be emailing y'all the balance sheets of those of the flowers, because now it's in the black. It's got, I think, $4,000 or $5,000, maybe a little bit less, maybe a little bit more. I don't know. I'm not sure about that. He takes care of it. He's a manager. He takes care of managing the association. Okay. My job is I'm the ACC. I look at the architectural control, make sure that when somebody builds in that neighborhood, that it's built to the specifications of the covenants, that the color of the house is correct, that the shingles are correct, that the size of the house is correct, that it looks good. You know, there's a litany of things in the covenants that have got to be done to meet the qualifications of the covenants are very, very stringent in that neighborhood, very stringent. There are certain stipulations that I have not enforced because I think now it was overreaching. Now, a lot of the homeowners out there agree with me. Some of them do not. Boats in the driveway. Okay, the covenants say you've got to have boats behind a enclosed fence in the back of the yard. Now, I put that in the covenants. Most of the people prefer to have their boats in the driveway. I don't go out there and knock on doors, and I don't create an issue with it. If the HOA wants it to do it and they want to get that to that level, yes, they could do it. They can go out and do that. They can have the covenants have the ability where the homeowners can create their own subgroup, if you will, to go out and enforce these kind of things. Because I saw that this could happen, and I wanted to give the people the chance to do their own monitoring. The reason that you do 90% or 75%, 9% is because the HOA comes in and starts dictating or having a lot of hoops for people that want to move into the neighborhood. They get real picky, and people don't come in because they don't like the attitude or the esprit de corps of the HOA. And as an owner of the lot, my livelihood, it's hard for me to give up that power. Okay, it's my money out there on the line with somebody else making the decision. When I did the covenants, I tried to look after the HOA. If you look at my covenants, you'll see it's very, very specific. It's probably the most of any subdivision in this whole county by far. Now, I took it after Songbird. Songbird's got, you know, some of the same stuff, but it's detailed.
Ben, let the citizens talk.
Okay.
Yeah, this is what I was just fixing to say. Okay, so I'm going to start calling the citizens' names. First one is Mr. Eddie Oliver, followed by James Daniels.
Good evening. Good evening. My name is Eddie Oliver. I live at 27 Nandina Way in the Flowers. I'd like to say good evening to you gentlemen and everyone here. We have several things that we've written down. In the interest of time, I'm just going to get to it. At the Building Planning Commission meeting, Mr. Boynton mentioned $191,000 as the price point that most builders are comfortable with or successful at securing buyers with. And this is something that my family and fellow homeowners took issue with at that meeting. We've been in residence in the Flowers since March of 2012. We broke ground in November of 2011. Since we've moved in, there's been between 25 to 28 homes built in our subdivision, many on our street, and most of them have a value that's north of $200,000. So we took an issue with that $191,000 price point. Of course, my family's home could not have received this construction loan financing if over $230,000 if it did not appraise at this value. So we had over $230,000. Our builder, general contractor Cheryl Camp of Signature Construction, who is both based out of Wakulla and he is a Wakulla resident, said that the low to mid 200,000s is a more realistic and viable price point for him as a general contractor, as a sweet spot for building in current economic climate. And the reason he said that is because he felt like that demographic is financeable very solidly at that price threshold. Respectfully, Wakulla has had a bevy of affordable housing options as it stands. Wakulla Gardens, and just to name one, there are several where there are several communities where homes can be purchased under or around $190,000, $180,000, $170,000. They're nowhere near build out. The point that we wanted to make as a community is the Flowers offers a different demographic option. The makeup is diverse. It includes seniors, retirees, single adults, couples, teens, children, toddlers, newborns. Many of us have come from outside this community to this county to live in this beautiful, rustic, cohesive, and harmonious community. The option that the Flowers offers has brought us here. That's why we are here. We've built our homes and planted our roots because of what we have. From an economic standpoint, and I failed to mention that my degree is in economics and I'm a mathematics teacher. From an economic standpoint, home values are linked to the tax base. The more one of Wakulla's crown jewel communities appreciate, the greater the impact to the county's coffers. We're not asking anything of this commission but that our original PUD be upheld and enforced. This commission, as residents, our homes' colors had to be approved. Our fences, types, and styles must conform to different standards. We even had to pay north of $400 for a specified mailbox. That's how closely we had to follow the tenets of our homeowners association dictates. This panel was negotiated with in good faith. Assurances were made so that the public good would be served, such as forestry conservation efforts, public playground areas. We recognize that since that time the economy has downturned, but we also have felt the rebound and have seen a strong surge in building in recent years. So a lot of these things that were promised, which is how the PUD status came online, have not materialized. We do not have a playground. We have stuff growing up all over the place. And we've endured those things. But at the same time, as I speak, 5 homes are currently under construction or newly constructed. With all its rustic splendor, climbing home values, proximity to an airport that's experiencing growth, and positive economic impact that our community provides by giving economically viable families a great place to live, we only ask that you allow the originally agreed upon features of our community's PUD to stay in place so our growth can be managed responsibly and for the public's good and for the good of our home values. After all, it's what this commission originally intended. Thank you.
Okay, the reason that I allowed him to go below, the reason that I allowed Mr. Oliver, and basically only Mr. Oliver, the reason I allowed Mr. Oliver to go beyond the 3-minute point was because I felt like Mr. Oliver was speaking on behalf of the homeowners association. So I allowed Mr. Oliver leeway in order for the homeowners association to give its full view of it. But going forward, I would ask that citizens, as you speak, so that because we have several citizens to speak, I would ask that you would try to confine it to 3 minutes.
Good evening. Thanks for all that you've done so far. I know you've answered lots of emails, heard from lots of us. My name is James Daniels. I live at 203 Nandina Way. I was a paramedic for the county from 1992 to 2007. I've taken care of lots of the citizens since that time as a nurse in lots of different roles. I moved into the Flowers in 2008. Had many conversations like the one you've had with Mr. Boynton tonight, and the price of the show was worth the admission. We moved into the Flowers for the simple reason of the beautiful area. It's beautiful, it's green, the homes are lovely. My wife and I could have afforded to move and build anywhere we wanted in the area, and fortunately we have jobs that we could throw a dart at a map of the United States and move to that area. We chose here. The PUD was approved by you, as you've all discussed and mentioned about the sewer problems and the issues that it's had. The changes in the green space, none of us were aware of. None of us were aware of what a PUD was until a couple weeks ago. We were aware of what an HOA is. Strangely, Mr. Boynton's HOA wording doesn't match that of the PUD, which both is written by him. Isn't it strange how some of this doesn't match? But yet these are his rules. We're prisoners in our own home and his property. We just simply want to live our lives. We don't want to endanger his life. We don't want to endanger his livelihood. We don't want him to endanger our livelihood. We just want to live in our homes that we work hard for. We've had enough of the games. We don't want to come back to these meetings in 2 more years if you don't pass this and have to fight this in a couple more months and remobilize and rattle the chains and bushes like we have so far. He wants to talk about architectural control and how he selectively enforces the rules. He does. 5 tickets have been given out since I've moved in, or 5 cease and desist letters. Yet, the $400 mailboxes that Mr. Oliver mentioned, that's true, but one of the newer homes doesn't match. Who's our control board? Mr. Boynton. Anybody want to do anything about that? Who do we call? Mr. Boynton. The conversations we have with Mr. Boynton when we do call about a complaint, similar to what you've gotten tonight. When we call the county to complain about the homes going in that are under the PUD size, you know what we get? Actually, we never called the county. We called Ben. Hey, Ben, this house is under the minimum square footage. Doesn't matter. It's going to get built anyway. County issued several housing permits for houses under the PUD.
Thanks, sir. Our next speaker, Mr. Chuck Hess.
Well, I'm Chuck Hess, and I don't live in Flowers. But I do, it seems to me that this is a property rights issue, and y'all are really big on property rights. And these individuals purchased their land and their houses, and they built their houses with one expectation. And now you're trying to change it. I think that's wrong. I think if you're talking about property rights, here's the issue. When you change things, when you change the natural area in this so he could build more houses, or he could do other things, these are all property rights issues, because when a lot of the people moved in here, that was what they were looking at, the long-term development of this area. And now you're going to change it again. This is just wrong.
Mr. Chairman, if I can just comment, we're not trying to change anything. We're being asked to consider a change, but we're not trying to change anything.
Yeah, our next speaker is Ms. Eden Rogers.
Good evening. My name is Eden Brock Rogers. I live at 7 Nandina Way. I was born and raised in Wakulla. I attended school here. I graduated from here. I attend church here and community events here. My family is here. I take pride in being from Wakulla. I left briefly to attend college and then grad school. After I moved back, I met my husband, who was also raised in Wakulla. And he, at the time, we still own it, but we lived it up when we got married, moved into his house in Tallahassee. So after we started our family, we wanted to buy a new house. We started looking. We looked in Tallahassee and Wakulla County. And we were drawn to the flowers repeatedly. We liked the location. We liked being close to Wakulla. We liked being close to the woods. We loved the green space. And we wanted to be in the... I lost my spot. Sorry. But we searched throughout Tallahassee, and we found beautiful homes. We found communities that were already built with thriving HOAs, but we talked to a builder here, and we were sold on the idea that this was going to be the community that we wanted it to be, that it was going to be somewhere for us to raise our children, that we were going to have a thriving HOA ourselves, that it was going to be what we were promised. And now this is being threatened. Our investment is being threatened, our property rights are being threatened, and we are just asking that you take in consideration all of the members who are here. I wish everybody stand up from the flowers so you can see. We came out here, in support of each other. We've been talking, we've been gathering together, we've been having meetings, we've been trying to do whatever we can to request that you hold up the original PUD. That's what we were sold when we came into the flowers. We love Wakulla. We're a part of it. That's why we're here, as much as you all love Wakulla. We find it peaceful. We don't want to be in Tallahassee. I drive 30 miles one way to work because I want to live in Wakulla. I had the job before I moved down here, so I could have moved somewhere else and been, saved money that way. But we want to be here. A couple of things that come up, I think Mr. Boynton mentioned that the covenants say that the square footage in the covenants is 1,600, and it's really 1,400. He changed it from 1,700 to 1,400, and then 1,600 got put in somewhere when he was talking at the last meeting, at the P&Z meeting. Also, I think they recommended a separate entrance for the borrow pit construction entrance. We have construction vehicles driving through our neighborhood all the time. I have one little child, another on the way. It's just dangerous. We have these construction trucks. They fly through the neighborhood, and we're concerned about it. Just thank you for your consideration. Thank you for your time. I know this is a lot on you, but we would like you to keep the PUD original.
Okay. Thank you. Our next speaker is Miss Jennifer Brandon, followed by Isaac Rose.
Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Jennifer Brandon, and I live at 216 Nandina Way. I have some concerns in regards to some of the things I've been hearing earlier in the meeting, and one was that the PUD does not allow for a borrow pit, but we currently have one in our neighborhood. We're proposing to have a new one put in. So I'm wondering what phase that is a part of, and what action is going to be taken to help secure that area, and who's going to be liable for that borrow pit, now that we're proposing to have an additional one put in. Also, Mr. Boynton had mentioned the Songbird development, and I actually happened to do a little bit of research on my own. I looked up 20 of the last sales that have occurred in Songbird in the last 2 years, and what I had found was that the larger homes, they were 2,000 square foot or 1,600 square foot, had actually depreciated the most in value. Their current selling price per square foot was in the high 70s to mid $80 per square foot price range, whereas the smaller homes that started as little as 1,100 square feet were now holding their values at $100 to $110 per square foot. So I do feel that these smaller homes will impact the value of our subdivision, even the 1,600 square foot, hopefully not quite as substantially. And so I would like to know, as far as what are the plans for the current borrow pit, what safety measures are going to be taken for that, and who's going to be held liable for that, because I don't know where the approval was for that, since it's not allowed as a part of the PUD.
All right, thank you. Before we go to the next one, I do want to ask about that borrow pit. I mean, is there one already on there? And
Yes, sir.
Let
Louis explain.
Yeah, if I could
I'm gonna
clarify.
let Louis. Let's let Louis explain about the bar pit that's there now. What phase is that one in, Louis?
We were made aware there's a borrow pit that's it's an area where there's a permitted stormwater pond, and we do allow dirt to be taken from areas where there's a stormwater pond or where roads are being built, and that dirt can be used on site. Now, once it's moved off site, then it meets the definition of a borrow pit. So dirt should not be being moved off site, but we do allow it to be moved on site as long as it's in an area where that earthwork is permitted, where a stormwater pond is in this example.
So they can move it from there within the same phase, and it's still considered the on-site?
Yeah, you can move dirt within the project.
So which phase does that
project,
pit?
Not phase, it's project.
Is that in phase 3, the existing pit?
Phase 1, right? Is that phase 1?
No,
Or 2?
phase 3.
Yeah, it is. It's at the top of phase 3. If you look at attachment, it's on page 38 of attachment 5. You'll see a stormwater pond at the top of the
It's in phase 3.
of the project. Yeah, in phase 3, and that's where the dirt is being moved.
And so I have a question, Mr. Cerna. You said, so this dirt can be moved anywhere from this retention pond to anywhere within the phase 1, 2, and 3 of Flowers. If it moves across the street to someplace else, that's not supposed to be happening. Who enforces that? Who's watching where this dirt goes?
Well, code enforcement has been made aware of this situation, and we did contact the developer. Now, we're not out there tracking where trucks go every day, so we do have to rely on what the developer tells us. So, if we know the dirt is being sold from the property, for example, we could take code enforcement action. But other than that, we don't have a good mechanism of tracking where the trucks are going from these ponds.
What about the comment that several homes have been built less than the square footage requirement in the PUD?
Yes, that is correct. That was done in error, by our department. We do check for setbacks. We do check for all requirements of the PUD,
County's
which that
not
minimum
typically in the business
size
square
is supposed
foot
to be.
determination for homes.
But if we've got it in a PUD, we have
Right,
to be in
but
that
in
business.
their defense, this is the only subdivision I know of in this county that has a square foot minimum in a PUD document. It's the only one. So if they missed them, I don't fault them.
Well, we all make mistakes, but
Right.
what's the minimum size home that has been built in there?
I believe 1,400 square feet has been permitted in there.
And I think I heard tonight that was in the covenants, which we're not party to the covenants, but we are party to the PUD.
But yeah,
Point of order. please.
That is
Not for you, for Mr.
incorrect
Boynton. I don't
information.
think Mr. Boynton should be
Mr. Boynton.
standing up anytime he wants to.
Please have a seat.
We're working to make sure that does not happen again. It is something that we should be checking for.
Okay.
How many homes, Louis, would you estimate has been built that were less than the 1,700?
I believe it's around 5.
Around 5?
Yes.
What do I say? 8.
Okay. All right. I'm gonna let these final two citizens speak, and then we'll go back into discussion amongst commissioners. Isaac Rose, followed by Bill Anderson.
Isaac Rose, Wakulla County. A couple things. Let's keep Wakulla beautiful. I mean, we've got 45% green space. Why would we want to reduce it to 20? We don't have any power poles, and I'm hearing that we're agreeing not to have any power poles. I mean, being in a hurricane zone, that seems like maybe a bad idea if your original option was underground. As far as the borrow pit, I believe Mr. Cerna said that it was not permitted as a borrow pit or not zoned as a borrow pit, yet Mr. Boynton stated that he was actually using the dirt to put in Songbird and in the hammocks, as well as in Scenic Stream. So I'm a little confused at the moment. Maybe we could clarify that, because it sounds like we're not all on the same page, or we're not getting at least a consistent story. So I'd like to say that I think you guys, you got a lot of guts being commissioners. So I mean, I think you're underappreciated because you spend a lot of time answering emails and doing fact checking and stuff like that. I'd also like to thank all the parents who brought their kids, because I don't think you get enough exposure to actual government. It's not all the political campaign stuff that you see on TV. So, thank you.
Thank you.
And one of them's mine. She probably doesn't want to be here.
We've got one final speaker, Bill Anderson, and then we'll speak amongst the commission.
Thank you. I was contacted by several of the residents, and so I went to the planning department and looked through the file, which is about 18 inches tall. It's a very thick file, and many changes incrementally have been made over the time, and to ease what was originally supposed to happen in this location. And I just want to, coming in tonight, you have a written plan in front of you, a PUD, that has many things, and those are anticipated to be changed, such as there's going to be an additional borrow pit, there's less natural state, the home size is reduced, the underground utilities, all of those things. Mr. Boynton has verbalized tonight that some of those things may not happen, but from a procedure that the county follows, you have a written plan in front of you. You're anticipated within 2 weeks to take a final action on that plan, and yet you have all kinds of verbalization that'll change it, and I'm very concerned that that will not get in writing if you consider even to do that. And you're going to end up with that 18-inch file having all kind of incremental actions too. And I want to call your attention to your staff report. The narrative to this, multiple times throughout it, has a sentence that says, since there were no requirements within the code for this to be addressed, the applicant declined to do it. If you don't have it in writing, if you make changes to this and you're going to have a final vote in 2 weeks, all this verbalization, if it's not a true requirement, your applicant is not going to do it, and that 18-inch file is going to get much larger. In addition to that, the staff report says you have no standard for borrow pits. You have no county requirements whatsoever, and you certainly should if you're going to allow them. If you allow this is going to be the second one on this property. Is it, as Louis says, you can't take soil off the property? Can you move it across the street? What safety requirements, what fence, etc.? There are none of those requirements in the plan, and there should be. In addition to that, as mentioned, there have been homes which have been built and granted building permits that are much lower than the PUD, which is the county requirements, and that needs to be followed, in addition to whatever is finally approved in this, if it is, and put in writing. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Okay, that concludes all of the cards that I had that people filled out to speak. Is there any citizen that I missed that didn't fill out a card? Did you? Okay, y'all are under Citizens to be Heard section. That's coming up a little bit later.
Let him go ahead and talk, Richard.
Come on up, ma'am.
Were you sworn in also?
Yeah, she stood up.
And Pamela Taylor, come on up after her.
Hi, y'all. I'm Pamela King Phillips, and I do not live in Flowers, but I do live in Songbird. I live at 95 Bunting Drive in the Songbird subdivision. I was one of the first purchasers of a lot in that subdivision. And what I'd like to speak to tonight is what I was told I would receive when I purchased my lot in Songbird, and what I actually received at the end of the discussion with Mr. Boynton. And by the way, it was a multiple-year discussion, as it seems to so mirror what's happened here in Flowers, but my county commissioner told me he didn't want to hear anything about it. He obviously was not reelected. So, also in the interest of full disclosure, I am the wife of a candidate for county commission in this upcoming election. So when I bought my lot in Bunting, it is the area that is called the gated community in Songbird. What I was promised was a gated community. What I got was a community with a gate. All there is a gate which functions sometimes. There is no fencing or other security around the rest of the neighborhood. When I bought in there, I was told that I had a minimum house size of 2,300 square feet. I do not know if that was in the PUD. However, there were ways that someone could build a smaller home. As it turns out, at the time of the building, Mr. Boynton did serve as the ACC, and special people got special exceptions to what was on the documents and required as a part of the architectural controls. So there are homes in the Bunting area that are smaller than 2,300 square feet. When we moved in, we were told that the karst feature in the center of the neighborhood would become a park with a trail and with an easement and a nice access that all of the neighborhood could use. What I have is a weeded sinkhole at the final negotiation with Mr. Boynton. He did bring in a crane and some workmen who laid down some visclean around the sinkhole, and the crane proceeded to drag giant limestone boulders up off the side of the sinkhole and place them on the visclean. After not too long, of course, they just rolled back down. Now the park is mowed by the property owners if they see that it really needs it. There were no additional amenity added to that area. I was told that there would be no front-facing garages and other specifics in the ACC, and of course those were all violated.
Thank you, ma'am. Taylor Phillips.
Taylor Phillips, Songbird, 95 Bunting Drive, candidate for County Commission, District 2. In general, conversation we're having tonight, I want to talk about some of the general principles here. Two things I believe in, one thing I can't believe in. I believe in property rights. I believe that for a great many Americans there is a goal and a dream to own your own home. It's also the last investment most Americans ever have. Now that our real estate market is still reeling, we need to do all we can to protect the property values of people who already have homes here, and pay taxes and shop for groceries and are raising their families here. I do not agree with allowing a single person to devalue the property values of current residents. I don't believe in too big to fail. This developer needs to live with the consequences of his actions and previous ones as well. A couple other things to point out. Our current county commission, whether you're up for re-election or not, have livelihoods that depend on developers. Is this the way we want our county run? The other thing I want to mention to the folks who live in Flowers, you might want to get every little bit of it in writing. Thank you.
That's all the citizens that I had cards for. Is there anyone else? Now we're going to go talking amongst commissioners.
I have a question for
Commissioner
Cleve.
Kessler. Go ahead.
Hi, Cleve.
How you doing?
Good. So we heard tonight that the developer expects the county to be mowing the streets inside of Flowers subdivision. Is that what we have been doing? Is that our policy?
We typically do not maintain this right-of-ways inside developed neighborhoods. We don't have a finished type cut and mower. We use a large bush hog, and what we're doing now is we're cutting the first 5 feet on the side of the roads, and it's done with a tractor, and it's not designed to maintain the right-of-ways in developed neighborhoods.
However, I used to tell people when they call, when I had Cleve's job, come mow our grass in our neighborhood, I said, we got a 15-foot back wing bush hog, we can come in there, and that's not what they're looking for. They're looking for somebody to...
Right. So the county, and that's the point I wanted to try to make.
Never
is that
has.
The
Never
county
has.
has never done this. There's no expectation for the county to do this, and to say that the county should be doing it is wrong.
That's pretty much consistent with what we do.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm glad I'm recusing myself.
Any-
What y'all come up with.
You did an awful lot of talking.
We've already...
Me too.
Well, I'm trying to... At least
We're
trying to
stuck.
advocate for
You're
the
not out
citizens.
yet, Ralph.
Well, we're not going to be able to vote on this tonight, and the thing is, whenever we come back to this, a lot of this is going to be rehashed or replayed again in about 2 weeks, I'm sure. But I think we've had a lot of good discussion on it tonight. We're going to have to discuss this all again, and if there's no more discussion on this issue at this moment amongst the commission, then I would say we're going to move on to the next agenda item and let these.
Take a break, Richard. I'm sure a lot of people like to go home.
Let's do that.
Yes, let's do that. Let's take a 5-minute recess.
This will come back on the November 3rd meeting.
Well, now I'm looking for command administrator. Okay, that concludes our planning and zoning items. Next, we're going to move into our general business items. David?
Okay, thank you very much. This agenda item requests board approval of the financing plan for the Lower Bridge Class 3 landfill closure. What the staff is recommending is that we engage with Ameris Bank for a loan amount of approximately $930,000. The project total cost is $1.3 million. And 1.3 will be actually be spending $310,000 of our cash on hand that was set aside for the closure. The subsequent agenda items will follow up this if this is approved so that we can have our financing, then we can move forward with the project.
Motion to approve.
Second.
We have a motion made and second. All in favor? Well, do we have any more discussion amongst commissioners? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you. The next agenda item is request board approval to award ITB number 2014-05 to DPS Corporation for the Lower Bridge Class 3 landfill closure.
Motion to approve.
Second.
A motion made second. Any discussion?
So what's the time frame on this?
As soon as we get the contract with Ameris Bank negotiated, hopefully we'll have this back on the November 3rd meeting for Ameris Bank to approve, for the board to approve the loan package. We will go ahead and award the project to DPS, and they will get all their submittals started. So I would suspect probably sometime in the December 1st time frame is when they'd actually get started.
Quick.
Yeah, good.
Okay.
Yeah. Or end of December.
It'll be next year.
I'm sorry, I forgot our JEA person was here.
It'll be about
Troy.
6 months, in other words.
Be about 6 month
Good.
project.
Okay, it has to get done.
Is there any further
Yeah.
discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, David?
Next agenda item is request board approval for Jones Edmonds and Associates.
Motion to
tax-
approve.
Second.
We have a motion made and second. Any discussion? All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye.
Next agenda item is request board approval of change order number 1 to Robertson Incorporated.
To approve.
Second.
A motion made and second.
This is for my idea of the turn lane at
That's right.
New Light Church Road. Just gotta give myself a plug.
That's right. Off of Spring Hill Road, this is the turn lane, the left turn lane that'll go on to
New Light Church.
New Light Church Road.
Good suggestion.
All right.
I said good suggestion.
Thank you.
Okay, well,
And it's not costing any local money, it's
That's
all
right.
state.
That's right.
Scott
Getting some of
money.
our state money back.
Thank you again.
all right, motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Next agenda item is request board
Motion to
approval.
approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made and second to approve change order number 1 to Capital Asphalt for additional asphalt paving overlay thickness of Tri-Link. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, I'm done.
Good item.
All right, this next item is actually mine.
Why'd Louis' item take so long?
We need to ban him from the board meetings, don't we?
That was very long.
Hadn't been for Louis, we'd been home by now.
I know. Okay, Rich.
Anyway, this next item is dealing with the Heritage Park. This is a letter of support for the Wakulla County Historical Society to pursue the special category grant to continue development of Heritage Park. This grant will be for around $350,000.
I'll make a motion to approve that.
Second.
A motion made and second. Any discussion amongst commissioners?
This is to apply for the grant. We'll examine what that grant package is when it comes back, if we get it.
Oh, yes.
This is just a letter of
This
support.
is a letter of support to assist them in applying.
Absolutely.
Is this going to go towards the infrastructure that Murray had talked to me about?
It's going to go towards, it's actually going to go for infrastructure, it's going to go to help move some houses, it's going to go to several things. You know, $350,000, they can really go a long way. I mean, this is a large project, and I think it, you know, the Heritage Park is slowly but surely becoming a reality, and I think whenever we have the Heritage Park there as it's been designed by the Historical Society to be, I think it is going to be a tremendous asset to our county. So we have a motion made and second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Concludes Commissioner agenda items. County Attorney?
Nothing.
Administrator?
Yes. The newly elected or re-elected commissioners are required to be sworn in on the second Tuesday after the general election. Therefore, I would like to reschedule the November 17th regular board meeting to be held on Tuesday, November the 18th, so that we can have one meeting to include the swearing ceremony and then the regular meeting.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion made and second.
Just 1 second. That meeting needs to start about 5 o'clock instead of 6. Do the
Modify
swearing
my
in,
motion.
the regular meeting starts at 6.
I'll go with you. Second.
Okay, we have a modified motion. All in favor of the motion?
Aye.
All opposed? Motion passes.
I would like to just add that if that meeting could be kept to only the most essential business.
Yes,
Okay.
we will try.
Because we may be swearing in 2 new people, or maybe swearing in 2 old ones.
Yeah, whatever it is, we don't know, so let's
No,
just...
not that I'm old. You know what Jerry.
You're an old swearer.
Yes.
One old one and one getting there.
Is that it, David?
That's it.
All right, I have some citizens who have filled out citizens to be heard cards for the second portion. Our first citizen is going to be Jay Herring, followed by Bob Danzy.
Thank you, Commissioners. First of all, Commissioner Kessler, I got a little heated last time with you. I am sorry if I lost my cool, said any accusations, and I definitely appreciate you supporting property rights earlier. There have been a lot of things said about what a wetland is, so I am not an environmentalist. I have never worked there, so I Googled it. And it took me to the Department of Environmental Protection .state.florida.us, where the Department of Environmental Protection actually explains what a wetland is. So I read it, and they said there are many definitions of a wetland and many kinds. In the most general terms, a wetland is a natural community where water is at or covering the surface of the ground for all or part of the year. Well, okay, cool. So I kept reading down, and it said, for instance, defining a wetland as land that contains standing water for at least 15 consecutive days out of any year may bring a smaller area of land under the regulation. Also, it says that the soil must be wet for 7 days, and definition that there's set requirements for consecutive days, and so on and so on, and it just keeps going on, and it's not that long, but it take me more than 3 minutes to read it, and you can definitely find it. It was updated as of January 2013, and as I kept looking, that's the most recent I could find where the state of Florida actually defined it. I grew up here, and I remember some years back, we had a hurricane that came through here, and I was either right out of high school or right in high school, and I remember I had to take my truck with a lot of local boys, and we moved a lot of people out of Sop Choppy in a very quick hurry. Really fast, because it was flooded, because they had to release both dams, not just one of them. Now, if I remember correctly, a good bit of Wakulla County was flooded for 25, 30 days. So that means because they released the dam, now we have more wetlands in this county? According to the state of Florida, it was 15 consecutive days. All I'm saying with this wetland bill is, look, it was ill-advised. Maybe the 4 commissioners that voted to take it off maybe should have done a lot more before he took it off. I don't know. I'm not a commissioner, nor do I want to be one. But I do know we need to define what a wetland is. And everybody's going off what the state of Florida says a wetland is. The state of Florida doesn't even know what a wetland is. I mean, so I say we vote no on it, then we come together as a county, and we define what Wakulla County wants a wetland to be defined as, not what the state of Florida says it is. And we might actually have something that 5 commissioners setting up there might actually be able to agree on. Because I don't know anybody that doesn't want to protect the coast.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Herring. Our next speaker is Bob Danzy, who will be followed by Larry Roberts.
Thank you. My name is Bob Danzy. Well, first things first, I went by and saw Representative Sutherland, who was in town today. So I would like to encourage everyone to always go meet their representatives. But in my case, I want to encourage you to vote for him. And voting is what I want to talk about. It's important. This is an off-year election, meaning obviously we don't have the president.
No offense taken.
Right, and no offense given. Sometimes people will decide maybe it was raining or it was cold or for whatever reason my child was sick and they don't vote. But it really is important, and I know I've heard it all my life, adult life, where this is the most important election ever. But it is pretty important. It's something that means a lot to our county, just the single issue of the wetlands. I personally endorse Commissioner Moore and Commissioner Merritt, and would hope that you would see things my way on those two issues. But even more so, to vote against the wetlands. Now, what I'm going to ask you is not to sit home, not to assume somebody else is going to do it. I'm going to ask the people and the commissioners if they can help in any way, but the people at home, it's up to you to decide how our county goes and which way it goes. I believe we have the votes. I believe that our county is kind of old school when you get right down to it. I believe the votes are there, but you got to go vote. It's very important that you go vote. Even if you don't vote for my candidate, go vote. It's the American way, and it's the way it should be. Thank you.
Thank you. Our next speaker is Mr. Larry Roberts, who will be followed by Ms. Dana Peck.
Larry Roberts, I'm Choppy. I understand that Comcast is not with us. Is that correct?
It's not with us now.
That would have been a waste of speech, wouldn't it?
I really don't want to talk to you guys. I want to talk to the people out there in TV land. A couple things I will make to you though. One of the gentlemen said earlier that the wetlands ordinance that was approved would result in a special election. I can't follow that logic. I don't know if it's a scare tactic or what. Comcast, I'll give us most of this presentation again the next meeting. Flower subdivision, that's a good thing to talk about. It's been with us for, I don't know, about 15 years, I suppose. I can remember several years ago I stood at this podium and suggested that the commission at that time, which was not all of you guys, I don't know if it was any of you, not accept those roads until they were suitable to be used, not to accept them like they were. And of course the commission decided to do that. I hope in the future you don't decide to do things like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roberts. Our next speaker is Ms. Dana Peck, to be followed by Chuck S.
Dana Peck, 2481 Surf Road. I didn't think there was anything left to say about the wetlands, but apparently there is, and I think it's fair to say that I've seen a lot of campaigns in Wakulla County, but this one seems to be filled with more hyperbole, exaggerations, or just fabrications than most that I've seen before. Desperate people resort to desperate measures, and so I thought I would come here and sort of state a few of these hyperboles that I've noticed. In a widely circulated mail-out, it was stated that the wetland buffers would be 135 feet. I don't know where that came from. Somebody just plucked that from the sky, but there is no way. In fact, that's about 4 times more than the mandated 35-foot buffer that is in the ordinance or the law that's on the ballot. In addition to that, and let me say it one more time, The wetlands ballot issue replaces the law you all took away this summer, and there have been no lawsuits on that wetlands law, and that's from your county attorney, who's right here. The other thing that I keep hearing is that the state is going to protect our wetlands, and right now the head of your planning department is considering allowing the building of a home which is about 4 feet from the wetlands. And the point of this is there's no protection from the state most of the time for the wetlands. So you are not in any way protecting the wetlands, and that's probably why the South Florida developers are pumping the big bucks here in order to come into our county. And this is a value of Wakulla County, to keep out South Florida developers who want to swoop down on this county, use this land for their own to fill their pockets, and then leave the rest of us with the damage that they have done. There are also developers here who would like to do the same thing, and then leave and enjoy their money and leave the rest of the people in this county who have moved here for a quality of life to deal with the damage that's done. These big bucks from South Florida developers are using this logic. If you want to protect the wetlands, vote against protecting the wetlands. I don't know who came up with that, but that's like saying, if you want to love me, tell me that you hate me. I mean, cockeyed logic? Yes. Do you all think the people of Wakulla County are going to fall for these tricks? I don't. Do you think the people of Wakulla County are going to turn over their wetlands to South Florida developers? I don't. And I think on November the 4th you will see that the people of Wakulla County want protection of our wetlands.
Okay, thank you. You got Chuck S.
Always nice to be last. Well, wetlands. It was interesting tonight. You hear one gentleman saying that you can't have this law because this ordinance because it takes a 5-0 vote. And I counted tonight. Every vote you had was a 5-0 vote. Okay. In fact, 70% of your votes over the years have been 5-0 votes. It's not hard to get to consensus if it's a good idea. It's hard to get to consensus when it's a bad idea. So saying that that's the wrong way to go just doesn't make any sense. And as far as the storm that occurred here, when I guess it was Debbie that occurred, dumped 25 inches of rain in Wakulla County, and we all experienced what large volumes of water would do to our county. And a lot of places went underwater. The places that went underwater, a lot of them were built close to wetlands, not far enough out so that when the water rose, it inundated the houses. That's why you have buffers. That's why you have protection. I don't know what lesson he learned from that storm, but I learned that we need to really be careful about where we put houses, because there's a lot of places we shouldn't put houses because they will go underwater. That's, we saw it then, and that's why we need to have wetland protections, because it will lower property flood insurance, and that will improve development in the county. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes all of our citizens to be heard. We'll go into the discussion issues by commissioners. And Commissioner Kessler, you've got the first two discussion items, so we'll start on that end and work this direction.
Well, I put this on because I don't know if any of you received, you may have gone to all of us, on some situation dealing with coaching at Parks and Rec. Well, maybe I was the lucky one then.
The code enforcement guy and the coaching at Parks and Rec. Go ahead.
Okay, so there's a situation in some of our rules that we have, and a person who has coached before at our rec park, but because of the regulations that we have, he was not able to do it this year. And he contacted me, explained the situation, he sent me things. I think that it's going to be a good thing to look at those regulations that we have. And when I discussed it during the, minimally during the pre-meeting conference that we have with staff, I was told that staff was already on this, looking at, you know, how to address this. So I was going to be putting this on the agenda for the next meeting, but I think staff is going to be handling this. So I just put this on here as sort of this is what I'm intending to bring forward, but now staff is going to.
We all run that by the rec board, I assume, right? Whatever you do.
We can. We planned on amending it and bringing it back at the next meeting.
Well, I mean, at least reach out to them.
Yeah, we'll reach out to them.
Get their recommendation, I would think.
Oh, yeah, I think that's a good thing. Yeah, absolutely. So, okay. And and so the other thing is I had on there is the clarification of current setbacks when building next to wetlands respecting state buffers. And that's the thing, the misinformation that seems to be out there is what the state buffers are. At least in our county now, we can give construction right up to the delineation line. And even with the variance that on this one project that Louis is looking at, which is a project that will never come to us, but even with the variance of moving the house away from the wetlands and going into a setback from the road, this would still leave a situation that apparently requires even a retaining wall and...
Is this the one that's going to be 4 foot from the wetlands that was mentioned earlier?
I believe so.
Now, here's a rude question. I don't want to get in an argument about it, but do you think that guy should be allowed to build a house on that lot or no?
I think that if there's a buildable area that, and there's actually 4 lots there, 2 double lots. I think that if there's a way to build something there, that yes, it may need to be smaller than what he wants to build there. I think this is using those 4 lots under the present condition. It's buildable under the present condition from the state. If they have any buffer at all, it's not buildable.
You don't happen to know what, I mean, was he wanting to build a big house? I don't know the details.
It's a strange thing. What I'm looking at from my review of the, because I get every week the site plans that are going to be, because I never know whether they're coming here or not, and I want to take a look at them. So this is a building that crosses from the 2 lots that are 1 lot closest to 98 is zoned commercial, and then there's another double lot that abuts it that's zoned residential, and the structures crosses from the commercial to the residential, and there's the intended structure, and there's part of the building that's going to be considered commercial and part of the building that's going to be considered residential. I never saw something like that. I was concerned about what the unintended consequences might be of going ahead with something like that. So there were 2 issues. Wetlands was one, but the other thing is it was a situation I was totally unfamiliar with, and so I continued to discuss that with planning and zoning. But that's what that was about. So, you know, the idea is if this is permittable, then there really are no buffers from the state that's going to stop in there and stop this. Okay? And that was the point of that. So if I might, I have other notes of other things that I want to discuss, but if you can go on to other people and come back to me. Okay. I just want to pull them out right now. Okay?
Just got one comment. As I speak to folks, I've noticed a theme that keeps coming back when we're talking about the wetlands. And the main thing is Wakulla Springs. We've got to protect Wakulla Springs. We've got to decrease the nitrogen in Wakulla Springs. We realize that. We know the city of Tallahassee has done a lot. And you know, I agree with a comment Commissioner Kessler made earlier. We need to see what we can do about sewering and you know, minimizing septic tanks. I mean, that's a logical thing that I'm for that. But a lot of folks tell me that they're going to vote for this to improve the water quality and to decrease the nitrogen that's going into our aquifer and going into Wakulla Springs. And that's okay. People are going to decide. They're going to vote yes. They're going to vote no. I'm going to vote no. I encourage people to vote no, but I'm not going to hate anybody that votes the other way. But I do want people to know the truth. This wetlands ordinance that is proposed does not address septic tanks at all. It does not address nitrogen at all. So whether the ordinance stays gone like it is today, or whether the ordinance comes back, it's not going to have any bearing on where you can place that septic tank. There's no buffer language in there that addresses you can put the septic tank here, but it's got to be 75 feet back. You know, there's no language there. And so if we're trying to decrease nitrogen, then unless someone is dumping fertilizer in the springs, as Commissioner Kessler said earlier, then, you know, about the only ways that nitrogen is going to get into our aquifer is through our septic tanks and through fertilizer.
We have a county septic tank.
Well, yeah, we can't control that, but here, as far as a house-by-house basis, and this ordinance does not address that. It does not regulate that. It does not fix that problem. So I just want to make sure people understand that by voting yes for this, you are not going to change where a septic tank can be located. The same rules will apply after November if this comes back as is in place today. So don't use that as a basis to vote yes.
Because I think the setback today, no matter what, the Department of Health setback is 75 feet.
Right. Department of Health sets that standard, and our ordinance does not change that in any way.
So I might comment on that. Since, to totally agree with you, the Health Department has its regulations that there are things that are specifically outside the jurisdiction of the wetlands ordinance that was removed. Such as if you have a natural wetland and you modified it and changed it from natural to unnatural, it falls outside the scope of the wetlands. If you have agricultural land, it falls outside the scope. So there are specific things that fall out. As far as, you know, in a maybe a technical sense, the reduction of nitrogen actually takes place when you have buffers. So there is this filtration that goes on, and it's part of the process. But it's not huge, but it's part of it.
And I agree. The further you are from wetlands, the more filtration you're going to have. The problem is this ordinance does not give us that. This ordinance does not address that at all.
You know, the ordinance that we had, and the people will decide whether it goes back in to protect their wetlands by voting yes on A, is a opportunity to have local control and protection of
I
those
think Ralph's
wetlands.
point is any protection, if it passes, any protection from groundwater is incidental. It's not the intent. The purpose of the buffers aren't there primarily to reduce nitrogen going to Wakulla Springs, I think is his point.
Right. It can't. There's no mechanism for it. And if you're planning to build a house that's going to be connected to sewer, and so there's not going to be a septic tank, you could still find yourself in a situation where you can't build because of this ordinance. And so, you know, I just want to make sure people realize that don't use this as a basis to think that you're reducing the nitrogen content that's going into our aquifer.
But also, you know, you might find yourself in a situation that you can't build because of the Health Department setback or the county buffer setbacks, buffer or setback, whatever you want to use there. There are lots of reasons why a piece of property becomes unbuildable under the laws and regulations that we
Actually,
have.
in Mysterious Waters I did many, many years ago, they had to put their septic tank across the road, but they could at least build on their lot. Even though if they just had that lot, you're right, it would have been unbuildable, but they were able to build a house and put the septic tank and drain field across the road.
It's a question of flexibility. Can we allow flexibility where someone can build? If this goes back into place and someone needs to build 34 feet from the wetlands, they cannot do it. There's no way we can give a variance. We will be taking their property. The ordinance says that the purpose of having the secondary buffer, the 40-foot buffer, is to make sure that we're not taking their property. Well, whether we have a regulatory taking of their property on the 35-foot buffer or the 45-foot buffer is still the same effect. You know, there's no way to distinguish that. Either they can build on it or they can't. And we need to have the flexibility where we can have common sense and people can use their property. They're still required to build in the uplands. They cannot build in the wetlands, whether this ordinance comes back or not, unless it's properly mitigated and they have a positive impact to wetlands, not a negative. That's all I have.
Okay, Randy? You're done.
I'm done. I'm done till November 4th.
Okay, Howard, do you,
Yeah,
let's see, Jerry said he
thank
wanted to
you.
go last, so, Howard, do you have any some more?
Yes, thank you. Just to answer some of the, statements that were made earlier about the difficulty of getting a unanimous vote. There was a unanimous vote on 2 wetlands ordinances with differing people on the board. It wasn't a board that was ruled by anyone. There was certainly differences of opinion, yet they were able to come, even on the first wetlands ordinance, composed in large part by developers, and St. Joe had representation on it, farming had representation on it, developing engineers had, I mean, there was a consensus that came to be. So, you know, you weren't on it, right? But you could have been on it. It was open. But
Cleve job at the time.
Okay, but so, and then the cost for a special election, if this if the local wetlands protection referendum gets passed, causing special elections of $35,000 to change. I mean, in order for something, my understanding, to come back to the people to change that, if that was going to be done by a ballot, it had to be done in a general election, not a special election. So I think that's not a fair thing to put out there.
If I could real quick, Howard, the 5-0 thing, I think we got to remember it's a moot point for 2 years. I think that's I know that's not the root argument, but even if, I'm just going to single you out, let's say it passes, even if you were inclined to offer variances in special situations, which I don't know if you were or not, even if you were inclined to do that, and we could get the 5-0 vote, we couldn't even address it for 2 years. I think that's important.
Right, and my answer to that is we had this in place for more than 3 years, short of 4 years. We didn't have any problems with it. If it was something that we felt as a board that should be changed, and I brought things before the board that I wanted to change, you know, we waited almost 4 years before the board decided to pitch it and to throw it out, repeal it. We can certainly wait 2 years and get a good amendment to that to come before the people. So, yeah, I agree with you. Then there was someone that spoke about against the wetlands petition, and that person had signed it twice. I don't know why they would sign it twice. If and one time they signed, they weren't registered in the county. So, but I don't know why the fervor was there to sign it and then not to. I think look, we can agree to disagree. There's issues on both sides. I think it's a little disingenuous of what's going on right now with the signage of saying, vote no, protect your wetlands. I think that's really misleading. But I'll stop there. And
Thank you.
And I just mention that the Department of Environmental Protection, of course, recommended to us to keep that wetland protection.
Curious enough, though, Howard, remember when I brought up the 1,000 Friends of Florida letter that they referenced that we had, when I was trying to change a comp plan, they said, well, we think you should just work within your existing comp plan that allows variances in that 35 feet. And even they were mistaken about thinking they could allow variances.
Yeah, and there was, he tried to, he expressed that he was Charles Patterson. He expressed that he did not express himself
I knew
clearly
it wasn't
enough.
a letter supporting me, but I'm just saying, it did say,
Right.
use your existing variance procedure inside the 35-foot variance, which we didn't have.
Okay.
Well, and we need to clarify that. That letter has come up several times, and I keep hearing that the state of Florida was opposed. But 2 months after that letter came out, DEP clarified that they were not in opposition with what this board was doing. DEP clarified that what we were doing would have no adverse impact to the wetlands. There was an article in February of 2014, February of this year, that stated that what we were doing would have no adverse impact. So it's not really, talk about being disingenuous. You can't say that the state is opposed to what we're doing when they clarified specifically that they were not opposed and there would be no adverse impact. I mean, that's in the Tallahassee Democrat.
I think that goes to where our existing state government is right now. They've, you can pass whatever regulations you want and then not have the people out there to enforce it. It's like having no regulations. Well, I disagree. I think when you have attorneys being fired because they're doing their job, I think that all the signs are out there that this has not been an environmentally friendly government that we have to deal with, and that's what the people are going to have to decide.
I mean, just a few months ago, we had a call on Shadeville Road, and the next day there were four investigators from 2 different state agencies out to investigate a potential wetlands violation. So, I mean, how can we say that they don't have the manpower, they don't have the desire? Less than 24 hours, there were 4 people there, plus a county staff. I saw it myself.
Right, and that was not initiated, as I understand it, by our county. It was initiated by private citizens who happened to see something that was in plain sight, and the majority of things would not, and that person had all the right to do what he was doing.
Sure, I'm not complaining.
I'm not
I think at the very beginning, he had all the right to do what he was doing there.
Yeah, and I'm not even complaining about the citizen calling it in. The point is when the citizen called it in that was concerned, that thought it was a problem, it was immediately investigated. And so we have to realize the state does have the staff, they do have the desire, and they do have the enforcement.
That's where we can agree to disagree. I think they do not have the desire.
Jerry, finish it up.
Randy wants me to talk fast, but I don't know if I can do that. When I came on the board 4 years ago, all I heard was nitrogen, how much nitrogen that was in Wakulla Springs and whatever. The health department said that there was 0.6% of 1% of the nitrogen in Wakulla Springs that was due to Wakulla. Less than 1%, almost less than 0.5% of nitrogen in the springs that was due to Wakulla. Now, I think, I'm not sure on this, but I think we have 2,000 septic tanks operating in the Springs Basin. I believe that is correct. And we still only have 0.6% that the health department can determine of nitrogen from Wakulla that goes into our springs. So, and that includes the deer and the antelope or whatever. But David, bring me up to date on the sewer, on a USDA grant, because we've got a USDA grant of $10 million that's going to move sewer up Spring Creek Highway. Can you bring me up to date on that?
The USDA grant is going to build the wastewater treatment plant.
Okay, please excuse me.
We're receiving a grant. We'll be receiving a grant for $4.6 million from the Northwest Florida Water Management District via DEP for extension of sewer to Magnolia Gardens and Wakulla Gardens. Each project gets $2.3 million. And that will take the sewer up Shadeville Highway. Then we'll have to apply for other funding to get it on up Shadeville Highway to get it in the basin, and that is our plan.
Yeah.
And I can tell you that our neighbors to the north are very aware of this issue. They've spent a lot of money on their sewer plant, and they are trying very hard to get sewer into the Bob Miller Road, north of Bob Miller Road in Leon County area to sewer Woodville, which I think would be a great thing for the springs.
Basically speaking, we're saying that the clarity of the springs is not the responsibility of Wakulla County. 0.6% has probably always been there. So the clarity of the springs has not really anything to do with the people of Wakulla County, and it will not be too far in the future that the entire county will be sewered in the Wakulla Springs Basin. The development that goes on in the future will be tied on to sewer. It takes a day or two. Government's slow, and you got to be up here to realize how slow it really is. But I just sort of wanted to bring that out.
David, I wanted to know if you could just, for the viewers at home, if you could give an update on Surf Road. I get calls a lot on Surf Road, on that bridge, on when it's going to be totally passable and free, and I get calls a lot about Surf Road.
We all get calls on that a lot.
Yeah. Luckily, did they make a pour today on the guardrail? You know. Okay. They were when I went by there Friday. They had framed everything up. All they got to do is pour guardrails, and It was framed up and ready to go, so it'll be done this week for sure.
That means 2 weeks. Motion to adjourn.
Second.
All right. We adjourn. Thank you.